Hi, welcome to MCOY, and I'm not the host this evening. I'm just a guest. I just wanted to say hello to our friends who are viewing live from wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're here today on the Melanated Council, hosted by Leandra. We're here today.
Oh, I'm getting an echo.
Oh wait, yes. I think it's because I had the YouTube
Gotcha,
thing on.
gotcha.
Oh wait, yes.
No worries, no worries.
I had the YouTube.
Gotcha, gotcha. Do I
It's
have
happening
YouTube
again.
on? No, I don't have YouTube on. If anybody have on YouTube, if anything, you could just click like the volume icon just to make it. If anything, you could just maybe I have it
Okay,
on.
I'm turning
somewhere.
this off.
Click like the
I'm turning
volume
this
icon
off.
just to make it. If anything, you could just maybe I have it on.
I'm turning this off.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to see Mickey and Guil. Am I saying his name right?
Oh, Gil.
This off.
Gil. I'm so excited to see Mickey.
Hey, Mickey's here. Hello. It's so good
Hey.
to see you.
Hey, good to see everybody.
Hey, Mickey's here. Hello. It's so good to see you.
Hey, good to see everybody.
Hey, Mickey's here. Hello. I didn't say that a second time.
Yeah, I think it's somebody's mic. I don't know if it's like playing
I didn't
twice.
say that a second time.
It feels like there's still a YouTube on, but
Yeah,
honestly, I don't have one.
Is it somebody's phone, maybe?
It feels like there's still a YouTube on, but
Yeah,
honestly, I don't have one.
Is it somebody's phone, maybe?
It feels like there's still a YouTube on, but
Yeah, is it
honestly, I don't
somebody's?
have
Or it's like somebody's mic, perhaps. Faye, is it your headphones? Or is it also like a mic to your headphones as well? Faye, is it your headphones? Or is it also like a mic to your headphones as well? Faye, is it your headphones? Or is it also like a mic to your headphones as well? Faye, is it your headphones? Or is it also like a mic to your headphones? Yeah, now it's like not stopping. No idea what's going on.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Weird.
It's like the insides of a cuckoo clock or something.
Yeah, or like
Crazy.
like alien stuff. I'm like changing around the microphone.
Okay, let's try muting all of our mics for just a minute until it goes away. Let's try.
Good idea. I'm like changing around.
Okay, let's try muting all of our mics for just a minute until it goes away.
So
It's gone away from me. Has it gone away for you?
yes.
Nice. That was crazy, huh?
President Manny.
He's off, he says.
Okay, I wonder if it was it from you, Manny? This is weird. Okay. So, Faye, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, and I don't have any echoes anymore.
Yeah, I don't have any echoes either.
Okay.
But Manny, can you unmute yourself?
Okay.
But Manny, can you?
I am speaking.
Yeah.
Okay. But for some reason, you have a echo.
I am speaking. Ah, nuts.
Do you have like headphones plugged in or?
I am speaking. Ah, nuts.
Do you have like headphones plugged in or?
No, I don't have anything else plugged in. I don't know what else it could be.
Do you have like headphones? Maybe do you want to like hop off and then come back on?
I don't have anything else. Okay, I'll hop off and then I'll try again.
Okay. Maybe do you want to like hop off and then come back on?
Okay, I'll be back. Okay.
All right.
I'll hop off and then I'll.
Oh man.
That's so weird because we had been in conversation for a while and everything was fine.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if I have no idea. Like sometimes that happens when there's like a microphone or something nearby, but like yeah, he it was fine before. Don't watch the stream.
I hope she. I hope he wasn't trying to watch the stream at the same time. That never works.
Right. Like yeah, we were saying, like if you have YouTube on, like I put my phone on silent, like but I don't know, maybe I don't know. Like that was very weird. It's like check all your tabs.
Should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we can do our intro.
Yeah. So, good evening, everyone. Yes, it is Monday. You are not crazy. I know that we usually stream on Tuesday nights, but since today is a very special day, we had to stream tonight. August 28th marks the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. And we and some of us in part of the Melanated Council in the Discord, they've been reading Where Do We Go From Here, right?
Well, as part of my celebration, I've been reading. Believe it's Martin Luther King's last book,
Right.
and it was called "Where Do We Go From Here?
Yes.
Community or Chaos." And I really enjoy this book because I feel like he outlined and he was, directing us towards where his thoughts were going, and gave us a plan for, how to make that better tomorrow come to pass. And I feel like ever since then, because it was kind of buried in this one book, and he didn't get a chance to really speak about it very often, that we have failed to really carry out his purpose in many ways because we haven't we didn't get a chance to learn about the guaranteed minimum income,
Right.
which he references both a guaranteed income, and I think he in this book he talks about how poverty is related to both race and war,
Mhm.
and to uh, the fact that we need to make progress from here. And so anyway, so that was my way of celebrating for this year, since I wasn't able to go to the 60th March on Washington.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Have you ever gone before?
I've never been able to do that. I have had I've had a very unusual life, I think, in many ways. But one of the ways is that I started out as mostly a suburban girl, and as I got older, I had some times in my life when I was relatively wealthy and I was highly educated.
Okay.
And then I had a terrible divorce, and I've since then come down to a level of extreme poverty.
Mhm.
And so I've been able to, witness what it's like to live in both the big cities and now in the rural areas in the last 4 years before now I'm back in Houston.
Okay.
So I feel like, in the past, when I could have had the ability to go, do a march on Washington, fly out there from Washington State or California, or wherever I was living. I've even lived outside of Washington, D.C. before, in Reston, Virginia.
Wow.
But during those times, I would not have felt the need to have solidarity with people who were poor or who were struggling with race. But now that I am in the situation of living in poverty, I, am not able to make that journey when I feel the need to do so.
Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite.
Right.
So,
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. Like, you know, and like thank you for, saying that and definitely admitting that because a lot of people would like to, like you don't know until it happens to you. you know? Like, it's not like, you're not like you're being an intentional, like, you're not like you're being like a bad person when, because you were a lot younger back then, and you were just going through life with what you knew, and you were just focusing on just trying to make a life for yourself. So, this is going to be a little bit random, but I'm sure as a lot of you already know, like, I dislocated my shoulder a couple of months ago, and at the very beginning, like, there were just things that we just easily take for granted that I just couldn't do. For example, like I had to help my friends get married at the courthouse, and the bathroom had the one of those sinks where you had to like reach and push down on the water. So to like wash, I guess, one hand at a time, because like when you press off, it goes away really quick. And I was like, wow, with people with only one arm, because like wouldn't be able to do that. But it's like I've never thought of that. These were things that I just could never even like conceptualize or fathom, because you're just young, living your own life. So yeah, no, like I get it. And yeah.
But it's also, I feel like young people are not invited in a sense because, you don't, how would I have found out about it? Um, my parents were probably not invited, did not know about the types of protests, and does not know about how to be politically minded. As immigrants, they would have just,
Right.
kept their heads down, continued working. If there's a problem, you take care of it, Um,
Yeah, true.
so I feel like it's very difficult to get like really important information. The stuff that you need most, is not available to us. So
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. So we're gonna bring on President Manny again. Hopefully, hopefully everything's kosher.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
hi, can you hear us? And there's no echo again. That's awesome.
That's great.
Yes.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Manny, and I just want to extend my thanks to Leandra for hosting this evening, and also having the pleasure of interacting with Faye Koo. And I'm I'm deeply grateful to be among this very distinguished group, and
Aw.
I'm very honored to also to be part of this very, in my opinion, a very prestigious council.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
well, I mean that. I guess what I wanted to do is talk a little bit of what got me interested in the civil rights, in the history of the civil rights movement. About 10 years ago, on August 18th, which was close to the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington,
Right.
I attended a forum at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library Museum here in Boston, Massachusetts. And at that time, they had this forum which was celebrating the 50th anniversary, and they indicated and they invited some people at this panel that were at the March on Washington, and they talked about their experiences, and they also talked about uh, what it was like being there and how they felt and how they feel today, and about the legacy of that march. And the effect that it had on me was so profound that years later I still think about it, because for the first time I realized that history, it made history a lot more real and
Mm.
tangible. It's one thing if you meet with people. No, it's one thing when you read about these these events as history. I mean,
Right.
as you can see behind me, I have plenty of history books. But it's another thing to meet with people who actually experienced, these events firsthand. It hits differently.
Right.
One of the most profound moments that I had was when I got to meet with Congressman John Lewis, who was the sixth speaker at the March on Washington, and I remember him talking about what it was like, uh, working with Dr. King and how his feelings were back then, and what we should be doing now. And because of, and after meeting him and kind of interacting with him a little bit, and also in interacting with people that knew and worked with Martin Luther King, and also worked on the civil rights movement, and particularly on the March on Washington, that prompted me to take up an interest in learning about what the historical context is for that time, and to gain a deeper appreciation of the struggles that they went through.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, like, meeting people who are actually there just makes it a lot more tangible.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah. And even like when you're experiencing it, just 10 years ago, as a full fledged adult, like
Mm.
it still, like still like rings true. Like to kind of go back to, how Faye was talking about like where she was, before when she was younger. And it's like, you don't really know because like when you're young, because I remember, this is a small tangent, but I think this was maybe like elementary school or possibly middle school. I don't know if your schools did this, but sometimes like a woman who survived the Holocaust will come and speak, and like I feel bad because it was just like, hey, she was talking to like a room full of children, who like you couldn't really, like we had the attention spans of like a cantaloupe, and we couldn't really truly fathom or appreciate it. But like, like when I think back and I hear about even today, like how there's like very few, if any, people who survived the Holocaust still alive. And I was like, man, I actually witnessed somebody who survived the Holocaust. Like that's, insane to actually think about. And I was like, man, I wish I was my age now to appreciate it. So like I think that's just like absolutely amazing that you're able to talk to, Congressman John Lewis and other people who were there, like that's incredible. That's amazing.
Yeah, I have to tell you, some of the stories that they told were so, like, it's amazing that, after hearing those stories, particularly from John Lewis, it's I found it so strange looking at them and thinking that uh, that our past, was their present. That is to say, they didn't know how all of this was going to turn out.
Right, yeah.
They didn't know it that almost a year later that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 would be passed.
Right,
They,
yeah.
they didn't even know if they would ever get voting rights, or whether segregation would be would be ended.
Right.
So it just gave me a deeper appreciation for what they went through and who they were, and something, all of us are beneficiaries of what they went through, and I think that
Right.
it's up to us here in the present to not only to appreciate what they have gone through, but to learn about these stories and about this particular time period, so that we can take their stories, pass it on to this generation and to this coming generation, so that we don't repeat those same mistakes. And in addition to that, that we could take inspiration from their lives, and maybe we could take that to inspire us to try to improve the world around us, and also perhaps make an impact in our communities. Sorry about my tangent right there.
Absolutely not. Rule number one, never apologize.
Was that a tangent? I felt like it was very on topic. I mean,
Right, yeah.
we're
Oh,
here to
thank you.
commemorate this very historic event, and I've never been able to attend a March on Washington. Have either of you?
No.
No,
No, I mean
but I feel that even us having not been there, that
mhm.
this coming together right now with other people who may or may not have been to any of the marches is still really important. The fact that we can be here together talking about what we're going to do now, to continue the struggle and to actually improve everybody's lives together, I think is critical. And I feel like that is actually something that's sometimes missing from other discussions I've seen. I feel like we're contributing something useful because when I see them talking about, what happened back then, sometimes people start thinking that it's some sort of celebration of things that have been passed and now we're over all of that.
Right.
And it's definitely not. And that was what they tried to when they put the 60th march. They said we're not just celebrating, we are continuing. And so whether
Mm.
you have been there to that specific location or not, where you are, you can be doing something. And I feel like this is where we can pick it up.
Yeah. No, like I was just going to ask, like both of you, is like kind of to piggyback on what Manny was saying about how it can inspire us. I feel like a lot of people think that everything is done and we don't really have to do anything more. Like, you know, 60 years ago, like they were literally marching for their lives. Like they didn't know if they were going to make it out of the march that day. They don't know if they were going to be like, just thrown away in jail and that was that. They didn't know, or they didn't know what was going to happen. And they didn't even know if anything would change or be inspirational or inspire or anything. And I don't know if I don't know if people just like have that fire in them to
Mm.
do anything. And I don't know if it's because they just feel as though everything is done and we're just like finishing up like the final touches. I don't know. But like, what do you think we can be doing now to really and truly like push like further continue marching essentially? Like what should we be doing now? Because like they were really just like out there on the streets, and I feel like there just isn't that kind of movement out here. Maybe I'm just naive to it.
Well, on the day of the 60th march, which was Saturday, that's a good day when everybody can make it. On Saturday, when they were having the march, I went to my local library
Mm.
where I am running a monthly program called Money Club. I think the name could be changed to something else. Maybe structural defects of money, how to end poverty. I don't know. Like, you guys can suggest some ideas. But
Yeah.
it's not about personal finance that I teach. So I teach about, how money has been designed to basically extract labor and resources from people who don't have as much as others. So if you have less money, the money is designed to extract money from is to extract your labor and your resources in exchange for this money. And this is at an international scale. The money was the tool of the colonialists, and on a personal scale within our own country, it's money's always trickling up, right? And we often talk about this together in our basic income advocacy groups. But I'm teaching a class every month, and I would invite people to come and join me. You can come help me create a curriculum. You can help me teach the curriculum once it's been created. We have several different lessons that we are doing on a regular basis, maybe up to 12 already by now. But you guys can join us on a Discord server if you're not able to come down to Houston, and you can teach this class in your local library.
Mm.
People are looking for STEM classes. This could fall under either STEM or all kinds of different, types of. It's just an exploration of money to help people. What do you call it? Like, break the taboo of talking about money, and
Mm.
also to continue to to actually talk about, I guess, to clarify what money is for people so that they can get out of this rat race that we live in.
Okay.
So on Saturday, I said I'm going to celebrate by live streaming the live stream of the march. And I feel like people in my community would have appreciated that. So that's something that I was able to help with. But how do you guys work on, your advocacy these days? What do you do for?
Leandra, do you wanna
Oh,
share?
I thought. I mean, that's an excellent question. I do feel as though the Melanated Council coming on here kind of helps. Like, our last stream, we had somebody from the NAACP come on, like a local chapter up in, I believe, Rhode Island. She was a friend of Toby's, and that was just like, it made me look into it. Like, I haven't signed up or went too far, but somebody who was watching it, Amira, I believe she went and signed up, so that was, and she lives in New York, so I thought that was actually like really cool. Like, even if it's just to go to maybe like general body meetings, or just to be on the mailing list, that's something. So like, I thought that was actually pretty cool, like thinking on it, that we actually made a difference. But yeah.
We have some comments from Gil. He's saying that he reaches out to nonprofits and extends his knowledge and expertise,
All right,
and that
that's awesome,
you're
man.
doing community building with your with your live streams.
Yeah. Okay, that's what's up, Gil. Is that, I think, was that the, like, that teen tech thing at Best Buy you did? I saw him post some pictures on it on Instagram. I was like, he was like saying like, "Oh, this is like my third or fourth year doing it." I was like, I didn't know this was even a thing. Like, but that's really cool. That's really awesome. Like, I never.
Yeah, there's so many ways to push the needle forward. It's my way of passively investing in my community. Yes. I mean, we all just need to be constantly pushing and all in the same direction a little bit. Just every chance you get, push it a little bit. As long as we keep pushing in the same direction, I think we're going to get there.
Yeah. No, true.
Hey,
Hey.
Toby.
Yay.
Hi, Toby.
Hey. Welcome,
March
Toby.
babies, huh?
Hello. Yeah, I was a little bit in and out, but it's great to see you all. Always great to see Elle. Well, really fantastic to see our special guests here.
Yeah.
I've been following the conversation so far for the most part, and yeah, yeah, I don't even know. Like, I kind of want to hear the rest of what you all were saying, but that question about what do we do to get involved and some of the stuff with the March on Washington, um, I feel like I've been a little bit on the outside of a lot of it, despite living here in Maryland most of my life. And that would be a nice thing to like change a bit more since there's so much proximity to different organizations. So
Yeah.
that's like my little brief thing before I go into any details.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say how, being in proximity to things is important, but then I'm like, well, I can't really say anything because Gil lives like down the street from me and he's doing stuff. So there really is no excuse. It's like, I'm
You could
so
just
far
team up
away
with
from
Gil.
right, yeah, true. Right. No, that's a good point. Like, just to actually do community service and, like reaching out. Because, like, I actually just finally got a library card, like, earlier this month. I was low key afraid because I figured I probably owed the library like $400. And I was like, oh no, they're going to come after me when they find out. But everything from like when I was a child, and I didn't bring back the books, but like, but no, everything was fine. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to go to the library more and Because
Oh, did did that prevent you from continuing to use the library as a child? At some point, did you just stop using the library because of fines and fees?
um, I don't even know if I really had fines or fees. Like, I always just thought I did. Sound funny, but like sometimes like my use my like our library cards, like our and but like I just assumed that I might be owing something, but I never really looked into it. Like it's
Yeah,
weird.
so I don't know if you were very low income when you were younger.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like we definitely were. Um, like I'm the last of seven, so there were seven of us. And yeah, like we were like we did. We were doing pretty well. Like, but it was definitely like a paycheck to paycheck, pinching pennies where everything But fortunately, back then, like the inflation rates and stuff aren't as nearly as bad as they are now. So it was actually like possible, but
Well,
and
see that is something that has happened to a lot of people. Is over time they get crowded out of the library because they feel guilty over a library book that wasn't taken back or something, and they filed up fines and they stop going to the library. But the public libraries are realizing that this has happened to people, and they're welcoming people back now that they realize that even libraries, public libraries, are, you know, endangered now with all of the new electronic things. And
hmm
so there, all the Mike Houston, the public libraries here in Harris County, which is the county of Houston, have gotten rid of all fines. The only
okay,
and the yeah,
wow,
so you can bring your books back late as long as you bring them back. They don't even record a fine anymore, and
okay,
they have a general yeah. So if you have been at home, thinking about using a library like L, go and try it. I mean, a lot of libraries are just simply trying to give people the chance to come back. So
yeah. Okay, because I think my library did say like there's like no more late fees or they're not accepting
there's
late
no
fees.
more in many
Yeah,
places. Check it out.
yeah.
Um, I think the rural libraries are lagging behind on this because they have so much less funding. But in big cities, people really do understand that this is not something that should prevent people.
Okay.
President Manny, were you wanting to say something about?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with
No,
what you were
just
saying,
agreeing.
nodding my head, and just I agree with everything you said.
Oh,
Um,
that's amazing.
that's amazing that I was nodding my head and agreeing with what you said. That's
Yeah,
Absolutely.
amazing.
It's amazing. Like, yeah,
I
exactly.
I, I appreciate good feedback.
Yeah,
Totally.
it's a good thing to agree with Faye. It's an amazing
Of
thing
course, I would never disagree with her on anything.
on anything.
I have
Okay.
nothing to disagree with her about.
Wow.
Well, I did want to answer. I mean, I did want to attempt to answer the question that Leandra asked earlier, and the question was, what can we do to start to try to make an impact? Well, what we're doing now is we're talking and we are dialoguing with each other. In fact, I watched a I remember at the forum that I attended, there was a lady that was there by the name of Elaine. Uh, uh, I'm trying to remember. I think it was Elaine Jones. Yes, that's who she was. She was at the forum on the March on Washington, and she talked about how when she was at the march, she said it wasn't just African Americans that were marching, for jobs and for freedom. She said there were people of all races that were there. She said
hmm
that there were people who were Asian descent. There were people who were who were of Hispanic descent, and there were people of all colors and races that were there. And she said, and I think it was mentioned that when the people gathered onto the Lincoln Memorial, people were standing, elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder. They started interacting with the people next to them, with people they didn't even know before. They were saying, "Oh, hi, how are you? Where are you from? Oh, you're from Alabama. Hi, nice to meet you. Where are you from? Oh, you're from Connecticut. Oh, nice to meet you. And these people just started talking. These strangers who never saw each other before came together on this march, and they just started communicating and talking to each other. And that's how it starts. That's how it started then, and this is how it starts now. You and I are we've never met in person before, but yet look at us. We're talking. We're engaging with each other right now.
Yeah.
We all look different, but that doesn't matter. This is how it starts, and the fact that we're talking about this event, and the fact that we're talking about the impact that this event has made on our lives,
Mhm.
that's a good start. And then and of course, you can always get into community organizing and other things that you might be interested in or passionate about.
Mhm.
But this is a good place to start.
But this particular march spawned so many other things. It
Oh,
wasn't
absolutely.
like right. It wasn't like they had some small agenda and then they pushed for one thing. They this particular moment will be the moment that people refer back to for all kinds of things. Like even Bernie Sanders will say, where did the Green New Deal come from? It came from this moment, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it's about climate change, which wasn't maybe on the tops of anybody's minds at that moment.
Mm.
But many years later down the line, the idea of a new deal of a federal jobs guarantee and all of this, even though that UBI advocates and federal jobs guarantee people sometimes clash, but it's the
Right.
same idea that everybody has the right to life and to economic justice and climate justice. And
Mhm.
so everywhere you look, you see that people have traced back their influence from this moment. And so it's really interesting, like how many people you know later spent the rest of their lives right trying to make this happen. So
Oh,
Yeah.
I wanted to interrupt briefly. I know you were talking about libraries earlier. I just wanted to, and this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Chad mentioned that he said a place for free books is about getting books in people's hands. Well, I have to tell you that these books behind me, most of these, I've gotten these books on book sales at public libraries.
Oh.
Yeah, I bought most of these books I have here. I bought them for $2 a piece, and I'm very grateful to the public library, especially over here in Boston and over at the one in Framingham, for selling books that nobody wanted, and it's allowed me to be able to have this collection that I never thought I would ever have in any other way. So I'm deeply grateful to the public libraries that have supplied me with this literature that has helped me to learn more about the world around us. And I just wanted to piggyback on what you said earlier. So yeah, definitely keep supporting public libraries.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that you could that they had sales like I've
yeah, the Friends of the Library, every single
Oh,
library have these. Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay. I've
Uh-huh.
heard of Friends of the Lib. Okay.
every
Okay.
every library has friends that sell the books. Yep. So it's really weird because I actually have an issue with public libraries where there's some books they just can't get, but if you donate a book to them, they won't put it into their collection either. It goes into the
Hmm.
Friends of the Library sale. So that's where you pick them up. So
Okay.
anyway, yeah. So not only do we have, so I'll bet we could probably think of a lot of other movements that have come from it. We know that, for example, several years later, they created Martin Luther King, Dr. King did create was it the Poor People's Campaign?
Oh yeah, that was in 19. I think it was 1968 that when he did that.
Yeah. And the march was 1963. So 5 years later,
Hmm.
Okay.
here comes the Poor People's Campaign. And that's the direction I think where he was trying to lead us when he said, I can see over the mountaintop, right? And I
Yeah,
can
that was on.
imagine.
He said that on April 3rd. Actually, it was the day before he was killed, the night before he was killed.
Oh my
That
god.
he said that. He said, "I've been to the mountaintop, and I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land."
Hmm.
Wow.
So I would argue that the promised land is where we have this economic justice where people
Mm,
are using a money that is not extracting things from them, that it supports everybody to be, equal, and to support everybody to have the freedoms that we were promised, because he really believed in the promises of the United States. That's what he wrote about in this particular book, in his last book. He said that we had all of these promises that were given to us in, all these declarations and our preamble and things like that to the Constitution, all of our documents that created our government. And yet, those promises were understood differently by whites and by blacks. And he very specifically said, you know, black people took it at face value. We are all equal, and we are going to, uh, all have the same, amount of stuff in a sense, right? But
Mm.
when it came down to the actual stuff, the money, then he said, at first, when we went to on that march on Washington, everybody who joined us, everybody was real. They were truthful in their feelings. They wanted to create this fraternity and equality, and he was there with everybody. Everybody, like President Manny said, showed up because they honestly, truthfully wanted to have this beautiful equality and peace. But he said when the black people actually demanded economic equality, or some of the, to have policies treat them equally, sometimes there was a disagreement. Like, how could
Mm.
you ask for more when you just got the vote? How could you ask for money when you already got this or that? And
Right.
like, and he realized that there were many people who were white and also living through the oppression of this money system. It wasn't just the humans; it was like the entire structure of not only the money itself, but the war machine that supports the money. And so he's like, everybody's getting crushed. And so it's not something that's going to only help black people. If we could get this done, it would help so many. It would help everybody. And it was a systemic problem, not just a individual problem. It wasn't like one person or some people needed to be taught to do better. It was that the system is crushing.
Right, exactly.
mm.
I see that you brought somebody in. Who is
Yeah.
Yes,
Ronathan?
Ron.
Yes, Ron.
Yeah,
Welcome, welcome.
thank you. And Faye, it is finally good to see you in virtual person reality. Um, right now, I don't have my camera on. I'm a little under the weather with whatever I'm dealing with. I'm hoping it's allergies and not the other thing, but the
Hmm.
other thing, visible allergies. So I'm just hoping and wishing and praying it's just allergies. That's all. But yes, no, it is good to see you, Faye. It's good to see you, President Manny. It is good to see you, Elle and Toby. And
Yes.
all of our viewers, cyberspace, it is good
Yeah,
to
I
see
want to
y'all.
say hi to Vaughn and Chad and whoever else. Please don't feel left out because we didn't call you out.
Back,
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, when Miki was on earlier.
Mickey helped me promote our stream tonight.
Nice.
Not
Awesome.
So
Thank
she
you so
just wanted to
much.
drop in and see how many people were coming.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming on, for joining us. We did ask a question earlier about like what is it that we're doing currently to, I guess, in a way, help push the needle, help with, like in our community. Hey, Hey. So
Hello.
chat, like you're more than welcome to answer, or if you have any suggestions of what. I mean, I think this is a good. Like, if what suggestions, what other suggestions that you may have to help push the needle forward. Like, Faye, you had some amazing work that you're currently doing, and like having the money club at your library. That's absolutely
Yeah.
incredible.
So something that's coming up very well, I mean, Chad just gave us that great idea to join the Poor People's Campaign, which we definitely can do this. There's also something called the income movement that's happening, and probably most of us here have heard of it.
Hmm.
And I find them very effective because they helped get the CTC for us. And the personally knowing some of the people who work there just seem to be very on top of things, and they're starting to pay people to help uh, do advocacy. So even though it's just small amounts and it's only for one or two meetings at a time, but it's a beginning. Like, in order for us to do really good work, I feel like we also need to get paid something, especially
Hmm.
if you want to get poor people to be able to have the mental space and clarity to do this kind of work.
Absolutely.
So basic income is starting up, and they're doing a it's called the Basic Income March Day of Action. They've been doing this once a year
Hmm.
so far. That's coming up in September. I think September, like end of September, like September 22nd or something like that. I may be getting the date wrong, but
Okay.
yeah. But this is a good time to sign up with them because you can actually host a movie screening in your area. It could be in person or it could be virtual. But if you like, for example, I booked the library right away for my money, money club thing, and I'm going to
Hmm.
go ahead and have the film screening at the library. And they're going to help you be able to have all the permissions you need and all the money or whatever, all the things supplied to you so that you can screen these really cool indie films that would be hard for people to watch if they don't have, the specific service that the indie movies are on. So the one I'm going to be screening, for example, is called Storming Caesar's Palace. Storming Caesar's Palace. And I don't know if there's any way to show. Do you ever share like a screen or share a picture or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, we can do
Oh,
that.
you do.
Yeah.
So if I just send you this little link, you would be able
Yeah.
to maybe show it. Okay, let me
Yes.
put it in the private chat.
And
I just think
also
this movie is amazing.
share the links to the basic income movement and
Oh,
the
sure.
and you
Well, you
mentioned
can.
something else.
It's called yeah, I think it's called the
'Cause I could put that in the chat and they can interact with
Basic
it.
Income. It's called Basic Income March. You just type those words in and it should come up. Let me get you this link.
Okay.
Okay. And this is how you would be able to host your own screening. They'll put you on they'll, like Vaughn is saying, they'll put your pin on the map to show, other people who is participating in this day of action. And this particular documentary I'm really interested in. I'm interested in all three. I'm going to host virtual viewings on Discord on our Discord server. So if anybody can't get to any other way of watching it, you're welcome to come to the Discord. Um, I'm going to give you my. This is my Twitter, Palestine Math. Okay, that's my Twitter handle. So at Palestine Math, if you want to get an invitation to a Discord server to watch these movies. But like this Storming Caesar's Palace, these women were inspired also by this, the march and all sorts of other civil rights actions. And it's specifically about the black single parent or the black welfare mom. And they got together and they stormed Caesar's Palace and shut down the gambling pits for a minute, so that
Mm.
they could get their uh, anti poverty pro family movement started in Las Vegas. And
Okay.
so it's a really interesting. You can watch this on PBS if you have PBS Passport, but see that's like $40 that I don't have. So for me to watch the movie, this was the best way for me to host this event.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So there's
Uh,
a lot of stuff happening, and
yeah.
if you guys hear about things, you want to just tell me about them. I'll check them out and I'll tell everybody else. That's what I do. I try to connect people to more things.
No, thank you. That's incredibly important because a lot of times, like, we have these ideas and then we just don't know where to start or who to talk to, or even if, or you might feel embarrassed that it might not be that good of an idea, so you just kind of keep it to yourself.
Or like, okay, like young people, they often don't feel invited because
Mm,
all their lives are told, do well in school, just keep doing well in school. And again, it's kind of this keep your head down, mind your own business, and then, eventually you'll leave this poverty life if you happen to start out in poverty, or you'll go off to some great college, and the rest of your life is all just going to be rosy and beautiful. And so you
right,
don't have
right.
to be, an activist. You don't have to think about politics. You're young. We're sheltering you
Mhm,
by not telling you anything, you know, and not inviting you to the power, right? There's
mhm,
powerhouses everywhere, and you have to map the power in order to figure out where to send your demands, even.
mhm.
Like, you don't know where to send a demand, even if you had one. So I feel like young people just need that invitation. And one of the groups that's really doing a good job of that is called Sunflower. I mean, no, Sunflower is in Taiwan, excuse me. Sunrise Movement. Have you guys heard of Sunrise Movement?
I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
Okay, see, some people tell me that Sunrise Movement is some kind of like household name. And I'm like, really? But when I say Sunrise Movement, a lot of people don't know about them.
Right.
And they're like a youth leadership group. So they are trying to look for people who are 35 and under. I did not qualify, but somehow they're like, oh, sure, we love intergenerational organizing. Come on in. They were very friendly and very inviting, and they were happy to have my energy. So there I am. They have also, just like the Poor People's Movement, it's a national organization, and probably somewhere near you, there's a hub or a little chapter. So
Okay.
yeah, take a look at these possibilities, and um, you know, young people everywhere, starting from high school. Yeah, Sunrise is a progressive movement that follows the Green New
Oh,
Deal.
yes, the
They
sunrise.
do the
Oh
Green
yeah,
New Deal. Yeah,
they do endorse a lot. Yeah.
which
Okay.
I'm not. I'm personally not for the federal jobs guarantee, but I feel like I am very concerned about climate change, so I can totally support them. We don't always have to have 100% agreement on everything to work
Right.
together.
Yeah. As long as we're moving forward, at least in the right direction, like I'm not really a fan of like a guaranteed job, but I'm more so, but like if it was between a guaranteed job and nothing, then
Well, see, that's like, yeah, like as a single mom, I'm always against whenever somebody says the word work. That tells me, oh, I'm not being included because you're telling me I have to work on top of my work,
right.
you know? So as soon as that, I tend to shut down when people start saying work a lot. But,
Mm,
but, or working, it's only for jobs or work. And that just makes me, that upsets me almost. I have a emotional reaction to it. But these young people are just so amazing. And I feel like it's one of the few movements in the country that actually invites young people and is actually training them and teaching them. So they have trainings that they can go through.
that's
And
great.
it's really empowering.
Oh, that's what's up. Oh, that's awesome. But I did want to ask, you know, especially as a single mom, you're definitely involved in and leading a lot of different like like community programs and also just not even necessarily local, but I guess national as well. And I guess I want to ask for people who want to join something or who are kind of on the fence or, occasionally think about it, but they're like, oh, I don't have enough time. Like, what kind of advice would you give to people like that? Like, anyone can answer, but Faye, I definitely want
Can
to
I
hear your.
just, I'm just going to follow up real fast on what you asked, because first of all, I am not a leader. I am a very good follower.
Oh,
Okay. I'm an extreme volunteer. So I volunteer in a lot of places, but I don't lead. I don't have time and energy for it, honestly. I am already busy with my child, right? So some people may believe that, if you're not working as well, then maybe you're not as busy. No, I'm pretty busy because I also have a lot
yeah,
of
of course.
medical treatment things to get to because I have chronic health issues. Um, so what I do is I'm a good volunteer. So when I see a good organization, I could check it out. And if they're doing something where I can help push it a little bit, or I can tell somebody about it like I'm doing right now, I'm letting you know. So if I get one more person to join them. I've done a really good job this year. Even
Hmm.
if I didn't actually physically do some of the work, this is a job, letting people know that these
Absolutely.
organizations exist. And so you could be that person. You don't have to be, there's always something you can do that is very small to you and very convenient for you even. But it makes the world of difference to somebody else because these young people might not be as social as I am or may not have the same groups. And me telling people about it gives them a chance to get more people and more energy. So,
That's true. Because,
yeah.
like, you don't necessarily even have to be a part of the group to let somebody else know that this group exists. That's, that is very true.
If I can interject here, I know that Faye recommended the documentary that was on PBS. I wanted to kind of piggyback on what you said and then use it in the context of something that John Lewis once said at the forum that I attended at the March on Washington. And one of the things that Callie Crossley, who was a reporter, she asked him, so what would you say to young people, like what would you say to those who are afraid to get involved, and they look at what Martin Luther King did, and they look at what John Lewis did, and they say, oh, I can't do that. I don't know if I can do that. And she said, Congressman Lewis, what would you say to that? And then I remember seeing John Lewis, and he thought for a moment, and he said, what I would say to young people and to young children is, yes, you can. He said, I remember he said, I say, read everything. He said, study the lesson of the civil rights movements. He said, go watch Eyes on the Prize. I remember he recommended that we watch that. I think it's a 10-part documentary about the American Civil Rights Movement
Oh, okay.
that he was a part of. And he recommended that. He said, "Go watch Eyes on the Prize," and he said, "Study the way of peace, the way of love, the way of nonviolence." He said, read about Thoreau and about civil disobedience. He says, study the life of Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. And then I remember he also said, he said, rather than going on some tour, abroad, for or some field trip, he said, organize a class group of yours, and he said, and go down to Selma and walk across that bridge. He said, go to Birmingham and then walk through that church where the four little girls, were killed. And he said, go walk through that park. He said, go visit this Rosa Parks Museum. He said, "Come to Atlanta and study the movement." And one of the last things that John Lewis told us was, he said, "I would tell those young people, don't be afraid." He said, "Be of good courage. Find a way to get in the way, and make some noise. Make some good trouble, necessary trouble." He said, "That's what I would tell them."
Hmm.
And there is a great yearning for that. I feel like young people want to do this, but they don't want to do it alone. They don't want to be the one person in the street. They want to do this massive. They yearn for the ability to do this massively peaceful action together
Hmm.
and to feel a part of a community like like where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Chaos is the idea of the riot, where people are just inchoate anger is what he calls it. People are angry and they want to express something. Yes, you get a chance to express something, but can you accomplish any further than the scream? The primeval scream. So I think community is where he's at. Is we're talking about how do we get together and organize so that we convince everybody that we're all part of one human race and that we all need to move together, to go someplace that's beautiful that we can all imagine. My imagination of what the future might be different than yours, but I'll bet it has a lot of overlap
Yeah.
with what other people are thinking. So.
I know. Yeah, I know. There was a bunch of stuff and questions that were kind of asked too, even before I came on. Now, obviously, Washington is like right here. Like I mentioned, I haven't been that involved, and I've never actually been to the march, including this past weekend, just because things were very chaotic on my end. Which
Oh,
is
you're in DC?
Yeah. So
Okay.
that would have been a cool thing. And of course, there's things to do outside of just going to the march, but that was just one thing that in my head I was like, okay, I can't make it to this march necessarily, but what are other things that you can tap into even virtually? Admittedly, I did actually sign up for the NAACP after the last stream that we had. I actually don't know if I told my friend, but I probably should. Definitely, she'll be very happy. So I did register. So I was like, oh, it's like $35 a year. This would be a nice. I haven't like followed up with any of the local people from that unit, but I was like, okay, what local orgs are there? I think the income. I've been getting emails for the income movement since 2019, of course, when everything was so active, with Humanity First movement and everything. I know there was some marches for that in Massachusetts. I couldn't end up making it, um, but I know I had some good friends of mine who were volunteers, mostly with like Humanity First, Yang 2020. So they put their energy into stuff like the income movement and like Humanity Forward, whatever. Now we're some years removed from that. And I know like on my end, I haven't really been involved in a lot of these orgs, in general, political organizing and that type of thing. I,
Hi. Too cute.
as I'll say, too cute, yeah.
Zephyr says he wants to say hi. Come on, Zephyr.
Hey,
He's checking
please.
in on me.
Hi.
Hey, hello,
Can you
Zephyr.
hear
Nice
them a
to
little
meet
bit?
you.
I can hear
I got
them
one
through the.
sideways for you.
Yeah.
So this is President Manny. That's
Hi, how's
Al.
it going? Nice to meet you, buddy.
Nice to meet you, Zephyr.
too.
This one is Ron, and this one's Toby.
Okay.
Hey,
All right.
Hi.
how are you
Aw.
doing?
So Zephyr is getting the since he has to come with me every time we do any sort of activism or politics or anything. He's getting all the he gets to view it a little up close. But
Okay.
again, like you said, because he's young, he doesn't always know what we're doing, or doesn't really understand all the time what's happening. But I feel like he's getting a head start.
Absolutely.
How old is he?
He's 9 now, and when we were
Oh,
first
okay.
activated into politics with the Yang Gang and all, he was like 6 years old.
Oh,
And I would tell
wow.
people he's probably the only 6-year-old I know who could not only pronounce the word Buttigieg but spell it.
I don't even know if I could spell Buttigieg.
Exactly. Okay, are you doing something in the other room, Zephyr?
Yeah,
So I can do my
I
stream?
brought the wireless controller and this controller.
Okay, all right. He's amusing himself with his electronics.
Okay, well,
Yeah, Yang Gang, baby.
I think MCoy just made history tonight. Yeah,
Oh.
I think so. I think that Zephyr is the youngest person that has ever been on this live stream.
That can't be
Isn't
right.
that the best? No, we
Yeah.
made history.
Yes.
All right. Yes.
I guess we haven't had like a lot of.
Yeah, like children like
Yeah.
make a little guest appearance. Yeah,
All
no.
right. This is great. And by the way,
Really?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, speaking of young people, I remember that John Lewis also said at the forum that I was at, he said that one of the things that he wanted us to do was he wanted us uh, to really uh, to really believe in ourselves. He said that I remember what he said, that we shouldn't be looking at ourselves as being too small or too insignificant. He said all we can do,
Mm.
but we all can do something. He said all of us can make a contribution. And I remember he said that's one of the reasons why I did the graphic novel. And the graphic novel that I'm talking to is it's a graphic novel called it's called March.
Okay.
And what this is it's a graphic novel, and I would definitely recommend this. I think maybe Zephyr might like it. It's about the story of John Lewis's life, and
Wow.
and it's done in a comic book type setting, but you get the real story, and obviously you get it from John Lewis's perspective. And one of the reasons why he did that is so young people could see the drama and the action of these places that were happening and all the marches that he participated in. And
Mm.
so that way you can feel it, and you can in fact taste it. And so he also said, what we believed in America, and what we believe, that if you just get out there and if you believe in yourselves, you can make it happen. And that's part of what this graphic novel is really about. So I don't know if there are any young people that are watching this. Well, probably not at this very moment, but this is something I would definitely consider if you
Okay.
want to get young people interested in learning about this type of history, particularly as the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington took
Hmm.
place. I think that probably this. Well, not probably. I think that this is definitely a great tool to introduce young people
Mm.
into the stories that we're talking about tonight.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks for sharing that because Zephyr might really enjoy that. And I put that in my list of things I'm going to request from the library because a lot of people may not know this, but if your library doesn't have the book, they have an interlibrary loan system where you can request it from
Hmm.
all around the country. So if
Okay.
there's one anywhere in the country, they can bring it to you.
Wow. Okay. That is really cool. I and like even for adults, I think that would be a great way to get them into like I mean, yeah, of course, kids for sure, but like, like I
Well,
was
yeah, I mean,
yeah, I
anybody
know.
who loves comic books. I mean, I mean,
Yeah.
admittedly, I love comic books too. So this is actually my favorite 3 volume graphic novel set. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's some on Frederick Douglass, Nelson Mandela, as far as the ones that I know of that have been published. But yeah,
Okay.
it's a great way to get kids, interested in history. Well, really anybody that's interested in history. If people specifically also are visual learners. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I was also going to suggest like any movies that you or like documentaries. I know that
Oh
you
yes,
mentioned
yes.
Eyes on the Prize. Because personally, like books to me are just like I like reading, but I can only really like reading like fiction. Like whenever, because I
Uh-huh.
usually read before bed, and to read something like so heavy before it's like I was trying, and I would just like be going to bed so sad and just like and it's like I can't do this. But
You
I
know, people like some of their history in these pictures, right?
right.
Hmm.
And maybe the words, there's the ratio of picture to words helps for some people, but some
Hmm.
people may be audio people, and there's some really great recordings from
Okay.
these times, and way back, it goes way back, and it's from the Pacific Film Archives and also the radio archives. And I know about this because I went to school at UC Berkeley, who is affiliated with this radio station.
No.
And so I'm going to go grab some of that while you guys are talking. I'm going to try to grab a link to this amazing archive of really, historic recordings from the time. So if you enjoyed being brought back into history, back to a certain time. Oh, it's just, these are not the history podcasts. These are the actual recordings of radio programs that happened at the time. And
Oh,
so it's really
Oh,
neat.
okay.
Yes,
that's
Well,
yes,
I'm
these
awesome.
are
definitely
archives
intrigued.
of really old, yeah, source material. So I
Uh-huh.
think you'll be really interested if you love history. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, because I like watching, like occasion, like, documentaries and things like that. But like, I know myself, like, I know I am, like, I am more than likely not going to actually like pick up a physical book from the library and actually like read it, especially not within the amount of time before returning the book. Because so I don't know. It could just be me projecting, but maybe somebody else feels this way too. I-
well, radio gives you a whole different way
right,
to,
right,
so if you're busy, I can only listen to things if I'm doing chores, for example. I can't read and fold laundry and do other things. But
right.
I can do all my chores but still be listening to something. And so anyway, there's another option for people who are not, it's not in a book form. This is really engaging because it was built for the audio platform. It's not just reading something that was for written. So
Right.
I love that.
No. I guess like I sometimes feel like, it's like, oh man, I should be reading this. I guess I need to like read this. And it's like, well, it's like when it comes to consuming history, I know that documentaries and podcasts and listening is better for me than
Mm.
reading it in a book. But it took me a very long time to just kind of come to terms with that. Like, I know it sounds weird, but maybe there's somebody else listening who's like, yeah, I felt like I needed to read it because XYZ reason that you have no idea why in your head. So it just like I don't know if it just feels like cheating if you're watching a documentary, but
No, not necessarily.
yeah.
I could tell you that for myself personally, I didn't start collecting books. Like as you see here, I have books on Abraham Lincoln, about 22 of them,
Mhm.
and that was as a result of watching one documentary on PBS called Abraham and Mary Lincoln: A House Divided.
Hmm.
So the documentary was so moving to me, and that I ended up buying books as a result, as you of watching that documentary. Um, I guess that I guess what I'm trying to say is that documentaries, I don't see it as cheating per se.
Hmm.
I think that documentaries can be used as a spur to get people more interested in the history of whatever subject that they're presenting. So yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, now that makes me feel better because sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, it's like I kind of know this, but I've only really like um like watch the documentary and or sometimes didn't really follow up or like you may misunderstand something and mishear something, but once again conversation and dialogue is great to also further understand misunderstandings that somebody else may have learned about this same particular historical event but from a book or from a podcast or from an audiobook or a different documentary, so yeah. So
I
this,
also collect audiobooks too. So
yeah,
as well. So
audiobooks.
I collect all sorts of stuff. I have documentaries and books, obviously, and yeah, I collect all sorts of stuff, and I like to learn in a variety of different ways. So I completely get it, Leandra.
Okay. All right, I just shared in the chat a collection of just MLK recordings
Yep.
with the URL at the very end saying PZ0947. But that whole website, the pacificradioarchives.org, is a collection of radio news stations, radio news broadcasts from the past, correct, Faye?
Yeah, so it spans this exact time. It goes from the 19, for example, the ones for Martin Luther King spans June 24th, 1957, all the way through December 7th, 1964. And, that could be in Central Park, it was in London, it was at UC Berkeley, and it was just, amazing recordings of, historic. This is him in person. It's not us talking about him. Just listen to him speak.
Hmm.
So he's not the only one they've recorded. They have so many amazing recordings. So I always dreamed that one day somebody would like just get me for Christmas a bunch of these amazing recordings from the days past.
Yeah, that is really cool. Like, I guess you never think about how, going on the radio, how that's just kind of another way of how, like, it's just forever recorded in history. Like, granted, yeah, we have the internet now, and this will forever be on YouTube. But I guess it's like, I don't know. It's just like, thinking of the past when pretty much they only had radio and TV. So yeah, like that's wild. That's insane.
But back in the day, I feel like radio was more engaging with activism, you know?
Mm.
And now it's you. You guys are the ones holding this down. So you are making the history. I'm serious. I mean, when you listen to mainstream media and they just barely have anything. I feel like this if one person writes something, then it's like a press release, and then everybody just keeps just saying the same press release over and over, like they don't need to write anything anymore. And then,
Mm.
and we can barely get any information with all this Googling and searching that we do. So you need people like this Pacifica Radio Archives, and like people who curate things, like President Manny here. When you curated, because you have already read all of these books. So when somebody says, "Do you know? Is there a recording or a book about something?" President Manny is going to know, and he's going to go, "I know. Here's the book right on my shelf.
Yeah.
You should go get this one." Right? And that is a very important way that you can contribute, also. Right? Being
Mm.
that person who curates all of this information in the information age, we are literally bombarded with stuff that we don't need to know
Yeah.
every second of the day. And you're like, "Whoo, not this one, not that one," right?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you let in? And what do you teach your children? That doing that work is very important.
Very true. Very true. Like, social media was, I mean, in the name, it's like social, but reality is just probably like 99% just garbage.
Mm.
If you see like what's trending on Twitter, it's like just BS 99% of the time. That's not going to, you know, help pay your bills or give you any sort of information to, get you to where you need to go, or help you in any sort of way. But yet we just find it so engaging. Well, it's because they built it to be engaging, but
Well, engagement and entertainment are great too. I mean, I can
oh yeah,
watch cat videos all day. I
right.
literally, I love it. But, but when you really want to know about something, it's so hard to get that information now. There's so many things are owned by big corporations, and they're not released again. You can't just publish a book whenever. There's copyrights. There's all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Protecting everything from us, even when we know what we want to see, and we have the name and we have the keyword and everything. Sometimes you just can't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody owns everything. Everything's owned, and I feel like this is not a good system for us, and we should really rethink it. So that's why I do my money class. So let's think about this. Should everything be owned? And if so, should there be indemnity for all this private ownership of all this
Mm-hmm.
beautiful stuff?
Yeah, true.
Does anybody else have anything to add,
I mean, I feel
or
like
any
there's
questions?
just a lot of bombs being dropped. Sitting here and listening. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just honestly like I just had so many like various thoughts, or I guess I'm just trying to like put my thoughts together.
Yeah.
In terms of like even like the local impacts, like that was something I was still really like thinking like, man, what are those kind of like the viewing party thing that you mentioned? I know that was some time ago, Faye, but like that's really interesting. Like, because I even remember there was this. I'm trying to remember what this documentary was, where it was like an automation type documentary that became very popular, like something about warehouses or about like I can't remember the name of it, but there were some viewing parties, especially in Massachusetts. I wanted to go to them, but like it was always just hard timing, like sometime
Hmm.
Saturday evening or maybe even during the week. Um, and so I remember some people would do things like that where they would have viewing parties of certain things. To I mean, in that case, it really was like Massey and gang people, but like, you can make it bigger, of course, and try to like spread the word, like go into your local communities, because that's the thing is people are always going to be open to like outreach, right? Like if you're going to go to some local community and say like, hey, this cause kind of lines up anti-poverty, or you're looking at things about climate, yeah, there's always a chance to collab or to like get more people interested in the thing that you're trying to, or like you can maybe look at what they care about and use that as like a, hey, let me, I'll stream this thing for you, or I'll like spread the word in my community. And that's kind of like how people, like I remember, like this is maybe a bit more campaigny, but like it may be whether it was people in the Forward Party or others who just were like, let's just see like what people are care about in the community, um, and
Mm.
we will like go ahead and like say like whether it's a local NAACP chapter or whatever, and you just kind of help out their volunteer event, or if it's like an educational thing, whatever, like you kind of bring your people in, um, and show interest and support. And so like if you kind of already have a cause that you care about, you can always sort of like multiply, right, amplify, and try
Mm.
to get like maybe a little cross pollination. If you're just kind of going to solo, I mean, we all have our social networks, right? And so I don't know what kind of reach or influence we all have or think we have, but throwing things out in the void doesn't hurt, right? Like, hey, even if I'm not part of this org, someone made a good point. Like, you can still share
Right.
that this is a thing. And I'm trying to think like I guess my big thing, because one of the things I was gonna say was like what I always was involved in. I guess there were like sort of STEM-ish orgs, STEM outreach. I mean, I was involved in high school things, random like volunteer things. Some of it was just through school orgs. In college, it was a bit more like, okay, I would go to a lot of conferences for maybe diversity in computing, and usually I was a recipient, so I wasn't necessarily volunteering. But when I got to grad school, I did a little bit more of giving back. Some of it, okay, I'm a TA, that's a paid position, but then I also was involved with NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers. And I mean, it's a little niche, but it's also a very big org. And there's a lot of orgs like that where maybe they're looking to like do STEM education for underserved communities. That's always a thing. Hey, of
Hey.
course, West Coast, West Coast.
Yeah.
I was like, I knew we were missing someone. I mean, I knew it was Rocky, but I was like, it's a Monday. But it's great to see you, fam.
Yeah.
Um,
Great to see you.
So I don't know, just like little disjoint thoughts, but I always kind of like I never saw maybe with the stuff that I did as like high up there. Like okay, maybe I would do some volunteering or I'd be involved in some STEM based organization. Because again, a lot of times I was more so a participant. I wasn't necessarily hardcore going in the community and like I don't know, well, I guess the one thing I did do was I was a mentor for Hack Diversity. That was like right when I actually started working full time in Boston. It was very much an accident because there was this like black tech meetup for black tech. It was like very informal, like hey, not even a real meetup, just like literally us meeting, not not the big. Um, it was like people in this black tech org were like, or this Boston Young Black Professional org, who were tech, were like, because I had been in the org before I even moved to Boston because I spent a summer there and I had like been keeping tabs. So as soon as I moved, I was like, hey, I'm down to like meet up with people. Like literally less than a week after I moved, it was like the week after MLK Day, so end of January. and we all met up, in the cold in Boston, but we were in a cafe. And then some of them were like, "Hey, let's do this hack diversity." Um, some of them were, I think, applying actually for different boot camps that were like, one was called Resilient Coders. I think that's for Black women, or at least for women. And then the one guy applied for was Hack Diversity. So I was like, "Oh, I'll apply." And there was a session in the same building, a volunteer like info session. So we literally just went there, and we're like, it was kind of ending, but we talked to the organizer, the person in charge, and was like, one guy had already applied, the guy who was really gung ho about it, and I was like, I'm just hearing about this, but I'll apply. I put my info online. I was accepted. Ended up getting matched with this guy. I mean, this guy was already really smart, already really on top of his stuff, but it was cool because basically Hack Diversity, you are doing a boot camp for underserved communities in Boston. So mostly minorities, maybe it's also women of all backgrounds, but definitely they were gearing towards underserved communities, and like probably giving like scholarship money for the people to do the boot camp. And it's very rigorous. So of course you have projects, you have things that they expect you to attend. Us as the mentors, just check in with your mentee a few times a week, or it was like 5 hours a month. So it ends up being like an hour a week ish, which still ends up being kind of like when you have a full time job. And like the guy I was mentoring had a full time, or he worked a lot too. And I was like, dang. So we're both like trying to make this work. But it was really cool because it's like, okay, I feel like my skill, or I don't know if it's education, teaching. Like I was always good with computers, math. So it was nice to be able to like be a mentor for this guy, who was from. I mean, I know he was like Hispanic, Latino. And that was cool, but like it was such a one-off, and I did it. It was like maybe a 6 month thing. So like I remember it ended either late spring or early summer, where our partnership with them ended. So I was like, that was kind of cool, but I didn't have the bandwidth for 2020. And 2020, at that point, I was already much more into the Yang sphere. Like early 2019, no. So I wasn't really like that occupied. But as life went on and work was getting more intense, I was like, man, I don't really know like where am I gonna like put all this like where like the volunteer thing. And I was really looking at all aspects of my life at that point. I had like a life coach and everything. Um, where I was trying to look at the things in life like health, fitness, finance, stability, career. What are the things that I care about or that I put my time into? Spirituality, whatever. And so one of the ones was volunteer and community, which I realized was kind of dropping off. I guess the Yang stuff actually kind of brought it back up, but the
Mhm.
more local community that I had maybe been more involved with, and I was like, okay, I don't have time to do that. And since 2020, I don't know if I can honestly say I've been as involved in some things. And it would be cool to like look more into it. Even in the Boston Black Professionals, I mostly was like socializing. I know that they probably had some volunteer events here and there, but I don't honestly think I like got myself as involved with it. But like I think a big thing too is like what are the skills you have or the interests you have, and kind of like what Gail said, that was really fascinating. Like teaching people how to like whether I try to remember if it was like a podcast workshop, and like that's really interesting. And like
Mhm.
I wouldn't have known that, of course, unless he like dropped it here. So I think a lot of people just like move in silence, not necessarily in silence. Like it's good to like, of course, promote what you're doing, get more involvement. But a lot of people just do these things, and I have a lot of respect for people who just kind of have like that other life that they're like, I don't know, teaching on the side or doing pro bono lawyer work or whatever. It's like, wow, that's like
Yeah.
it's serious. Like,
Toby, what I'm hearing from you is like you're doing a lot of this self reflection, like, what have I been doing lately? And what is there out there that I could feel comfortable, like, really participating in and stuff like that? And I feel like that's what everybody is searching for. Everybody's searching for something that makes them feel fulfilled, right? And that they feel like they can have some impact and they're not just doing it alone. And that it's going to improve everybody's lives. And so I feel like this is something that I feel like this is part of the challenge now, is that we don't want to go back to the days when you went out into the street and you thought maybe the police were going to shoot you because you're making a protest. We
Mhm.
want to move into a place where we can go out into the street anytime and we don't feel like we're going to get shot. We are powerful together, and that we feel like we can bring our children. Like this is one of my struggles: is can I bring my well, originally was 6 years old, now he's 9. So can I bring my 9-year old, to this event? Can I bring an elderly person to this event and know that she'll be okay? She's not gonna just be overheated and then have to go home. I want I want us to organize events that are going to be peaceful, but also inclusive for people who are elderly or young or disabled or LGBTQ, and they feel comfortable too coming to the event. You
Mhm.
know, and that's the thing is we have to if we can create these spaces that are safe for everybody, then we're going to succeed. If it's always going to be like we're out in the heat, marching for 100 miles somewhere, how can you get massive, you know, movement together? So it's not, we don't have to always find the hardest thing to do and prove ourselves. Sometimes what we need to do is make it possible for everybody to attend.
Yeah, I
Sure.
guess start small and grow from there.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
So when you just do little things that are easy for you, that is just fine, and you just continue doing more of that, and you are going to get to where you'll find more and more things you can invite people to. Don't do it alone. Enjoy it.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
true.
It's always a lifelong thing, and I guess I would say I'm not too stressed necessarily about it. Like I've had to really get to the point where I've put more time into myself because I usually would overexert, even if it wasn't formal volunteering, which usually wasn't the case. It was more of just like helping out people where I could in my like friend group or circle. Especially when I was in grad school, I was literally giving a lot of myself, whether leadership orgs or other things. And so, kind of like from some lessons of like, okay, I really can't pour from that empty cup. I've really like taken to making sure that my kind of needs are met first and foremost. Especially since I moved here to Maryland, it's really been nonstop, and getting things together has been priority. And so I know that there's always going to be time to do that reflecting, and there's always going to be that time um, to like you said, you don't have to do it alone, which is a big thing because sometimes when you want to get involved in some orgs, especially if it's like things that are trying to get off the ground or they're like you're very much in that underdog type of feeling, then it's like sometimes you are the person who's helping to hold this together, right? Or it's like every person matters, and not that like even bigger orgs that you're not making a difference, but I know sometimes there's that pressure of it's like a
Yeah.
smaller org. Even like Nicole the other week was like, yeah, if you are joining like um, NAACP chapter and it's like maybe they're not fully up to date with their website and other things, and you're a younger person, you might feel the pressure of like, okay, they're gonna like try to bring you on and you volunteer. Even my dad's church, like, I used to be in the tech me and my brother used to like help with setting. We wouldn't always get there on time enough to set everything up, but at least we'd help break down the sound system, you know, put things away. And then when I
Right.
was in college, I ended up getting involved. It wasn't really intentional, but my last semester, my last 2 semesters, I got involved in a church. Well, I was involved already for most of my college years, but I got starting to help with the tech team and setting things up. Again, not always the big priority, but sometimes just like helping things down, break things down. And so those types of things like have been doable in the past, but again, had to take a step back with a lot of things. So it's just kind of a balance of like, what can I do to make sure I'm in a good place too? And so I think that's something that I'm much more comfortable with. And I'll figure out how to sort of pivot. But um, I'm also going to look back through the chat too, because I know there's been. Okay, I may not have missed as much as I thought. I'm going to check all these links for sure.
I if I'm, and Toby, definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but if from what you're saying, kind of sounds like it's it's a little intimidating to kind of start something, because if it's just like, hey, I'm going to start this thing and it's just me, and I think it's really cool and I want you to be involved too so we can do this thing, and it's like, I don't know, I'm busy, I got other things to do, and then like I'm sure like the civil rights movement was of course it started small, like it couldn't have just like immediately started as like 1,000 people, like like with anything, like with anything, with any movement, like you start small, you and you keep doing it, you stay consistent, and you know, and it will eventually grow.
And that's very true.
So I want to say that there's something like very specific, I think though, that all of our movements are really about right now. And I think that what it is we need to make our life uh you know money has changed our lives in a way that we can no longer sustain ourselves if we
Right.
do not use money. Supposing you had no money back in the day, you could trade, right? People often, when I ask people what was the original economy before money, 99% of people tell me, oh, well, barter, right? Before money was invented, we just traded and used barter. But the original economy, the true economy,
Yeah.
as anthropologists know, is the gift economy,
Yeah.
right? And in the gift economy, you would use that with your family and friends and anybody in your tribe, pretty much anybody that you knew well enough to keep track of your relative status to them.
Hmm.
If somebody had higher status than you, you try to do what they want, what they ask of you. And supposing you didn't, like if you're if you don't listen to your parents, what happens? Immediately there's a response to remind you who's of higher status, right, of this group. So that was the social. This is how we socialized with each other. Is we just presented each other with gifts. We gifted our time and energy to whoever needed it. If somebody's building a house, we all showed up and we raised a house together. If somebody was getting married, we showed up to the wedding with presents, right? We show up to make sure that they have a good life. If you see a baby anywhere, it's not your baby, but we're the parents. If that baby's standing around long enough, somebody's going to go help them
Hmm.
because is nobody's going to just let a baby be out in the streets with no parents. So our social our us as human beings, we were always meant to live in a society where um, your own social status within your own groups would sustain you. It would provide for all of your basics.
Hmm.
And only if you met like a tribe from across the river, you don't know who these strangers are, so you don't know what your relative status is, and you might not meet them again. So that's when we would trade or barter or use money.
Gotcha.
But we've created a life where everybody has to use money, and so it's very precarious. Imagine if your life depends on strangers who don't care about you. That's the life we're living now. We've
Hmm.
created a life where you can no longer get rent. It's not your family and friends that make sure that you have a place to live. It's some landlord who doesn't have any natural relationship to you except that you're going to pay the money.
Hmm.
So it's like everything all of our basic living needs have been shifted over to this money system. And so that's really what every type of anything that you do that increases our mutual aid to each other, that helps each other, um, survive this amazingly difficult life we've created for ourselves, is political in nature and is, activism. So if you work, through a church, that's activism. If you work through your family and friends and you're saying, all I've done this year is give my friend a couch to sleep on, when they were housing precarious, you've done some activism.
Yeah.
So that's just think about it that way.
That's an interesting point, especially like the. I know mutual aid is something that I've always like wanted to look more into because
Mhm.
like when it comes to people who are really doing the work and doing something, I mean, mutual aid, it always just sounded like this kind of like this. You're just giving people are just giving their resources to people. I mean, even if you want to bring back the religious overtones, like the original church was that thing of just everyone gave what they had to each other. That's really what it was supposed to be. A very selfless type of community, and so seeing like something like that, which transcends a bit of the political lines. You're not. It's not directly like okay, you're voting. It's a direct action type thing, I guess. You're giving your resources to other people, and I wouldn't say. I mean, you could say it's really like the throes of socialism, but it just seems like such a really powerful thing, and it's not something that I hear. Like I would see sometimes people post on like people tweet, um, and they would talk about like of course you have those people like maybe there's someone homeless, maybe they're LGBTQ, like there's different people who were in certain marginalized instances where they'd say help raise fund for this person to survive. And of course, you always see those like fundraisers and things, but just mutual aid as a concept is just so interesting. It is something that would have been interested to have looked into more. Like there's certain more left leaning things that or leftist type of actions that weren't always focused on in the context of whether you want to say campaign, Yang. I mean, the people came from all over the place. There were many people who very much were left. Like the rent strikes were very popular. I remember there was a lot of people who were Humanity First people who did those rent strikes, and I mean, pretty radical stuff, right? Like we're gonna like go and circle your because of course it was COVID, so we're gonna drive around City Block or City Hall or wherever, and basically be like, yeah, this isn't okay. Like we need moratoriums, we need all of this. Mutual aid was another big one. So I don't know. That's just something that I definitely need to look more into. But I think is like a fascinating thing. It really just goes back to the basics of humanity before like you had these systems, like the banks and everything else. People were bartering or giving money to each other as they not money but resources and helping each other out. Like you said, you have family before like without like the whole landlord or the corporate. Even if you have like small landlords, but then especially the bigger corporate, more property managed, where it's very much removed and that personal connection is gone. You had those family connections, multi generational, which a lot of immigrant families still do practice, but not all. Because I've noticed there's some where it's just very different. But then there's some where it is much more popular, where people do kind of take care of each other within that house or within a block, right? And so, yeah, there's a lot of room for I guess practicing community support, which isn't always. I mean, that's like another conversation, but it's like it's not always popular. It's not always what people seek to do, especially once you like become old enough. You want to be on your own and all of that. But kind of like blending topics there a little. Um, but I don't know. Just it is really interesting. So it's cool that you brought some of that up.
Yeah.
So that's something that I always wondered about Martin Luther King and the different churches, doing all of these things together in the past. I feel like we've created a system where, like, if you have church, you're not supposed to be political. Like the
Hmm.
church, the legal framework for church. Same thing with charities. Charitable giving is divided into political and non-political. Right. The political is again taxed again somehow, but the you have to stay non-political all the time in order
Hmm.
to enjoy these, tax benefits and stuff. And I always wondered, well, if every church I go to now says they can't do any politics, but when I go to the black churches, they're like everybody is doing politics together, and I love that.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's something going on where they've convinced us that that we can be apolitical creatures, and it's just not true, right? We live in a society, so we have to be political in nature.
Hmm.
So
Right. Yeah. Because politics pretty much and laws control everything that we can do. So it's just like, what? How are we going to just not talk about this thing? It's like the biggest pink elephant in the room. You know? It's like,
yeah,
oh, are you like? I don't know. It's like if especially with so many people like living in poverty and things just getting worse. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. I shared the Discord in the chat. It would be awesome if you joined our Discord.
yeah, and so like the same thing with the like money is another taboo subject. We're not supposed to talk about it.
Right.
We
Yeah.
can't talk about it anywhere. Everywhere you go, if you start talking about money, they want to shut you down.
Right. Is
But
it?
it's like impacts all of us so much, right? To be able to
Yeah.
understand money and to like just be able to have a normal conversation about it without all these crazy feelings and being shut down immediately. I would love to just see people, work on that.
Yeah. Same here. Like just being able to. Yeah. And like it's true. Like I remember I was watching. Like I follow your rich BFF on like YouTube and Instagram. She's also on TikTok, but I deleted TikTok like a year ago, and she was on a podcast with Chelsea Fagan, who's the owner of the Financial Diet, and she was talking about how like you should talk about money and like like that's a very important thing to talk about. Like, you should talk about it with your friends. You should talk about it, with like your significant other, with your family, because like when you actually start to say the number, it's like, hey, I make this amount of money, these things cost this much, these bills, you start to understand, and like can actually like it can help you out, and probably figure out certain things, like I think it's great that she's a great like person. I mean, I don't know her personally, but like she has said things that has helped me, like opening up like a high yield savings account, and like if you receive like a like something from like the hospital, like an explanation of benefits, or they might say like, oh, you may owe this amount of money, don't immediately go and pay it, like ask like the actual location of where you got your stuff done. It's like, hey, do I need to pay this, or like can you give me an itemized bill to see what is it that I actually owe, because it may be like, oh, you owe like $500, but they're like, no, you don't owe $500, you owe like $17, like, and then you might end up paying something else, and it's like, who the heck are you paying if you just went ahead and just paid it.
What was the context of that? That
Um, so it's things that I learned from your rich BFF. She's
oh,
like an influencer and content creator. That's a better term. Influencer, like not really. She's not like on the
brand deal.
beach, like
Yeah.
doing like doing like bikini photos. At least not to my knowledge, but yeah, and like, and I personally love talking about money. Like, it's always weird when you're around people who are just like very hush hush about it. It's like, I don't care how much you make, like like there might be things that I know that you don't know that can help you, and there might be things that that I don't know that can help me. And like, I'm just trying to, I just want everybody fed. I just want everybody comfortable. I just want like, but there are people who, I guess, they think that, and it happens, like when you find out that somebody's making, a significant more amount than you, or vice versa, like people can start acting funny. People can start acting a little bit different. And, but I mean, that's how it is with like literally anything. Like, people will start acting different if they find out that you have a boyfriend. People will start acting different when they find out that you got a new car. People will start acting different when they find out that you joined like the adult kickball league. And you're, like, people just start acting different for weird reasons. So, money technically isn't different, but it is, but it can, of course, like cause like a much bigger reaction depending. So I guess that's why certain people may be reluctant to understand, but are reluctant to share how much they make, but it's still important.
And there's something about that actually that I wanted to jump in on, because I don't really talk much about, I guess salary, for instance. Definitely not with coworkers. Never. I mean, I know that's like a big thing of solidarity. People talk about it. I've never, I think, ever asked anybody about not even people who I like. Mish literally works at the same job. That's how we know each other. And I've never even asked Mish like, how much do you make? So it's kind of funny because it's like, like I don't really talk about it like that. But when I was in grad school, when I got this job, this full, like I was an intern, right? That's how I got to Massachusetts. Then I started working full time. L for Lamborghini.
Right. I fell asleep in a new Bugatti. Or I woke up in a new Bugatti.
Yes. Oh man, that's so funny. But there was this. Yeah, I just remember like this guy. I mean, because I was a grad student and a lot of my friends were undergrads, but I think this guy was like a fifth year master, so he was getting into his master's degree, and he was probably graduating the next year. And so I just graduated with my master's, and so he literally was like, "How much do you like? Well, how much did they give you? Was the offer?" And he was like, "Sorry, that may have came off really blunt, but it's just like, I mean, first of all, this guy was like in Nesby, the black engineers. I think a lot of people are cool with each other just to know, and I mean, this guy's like a New Yorker through and through. Like, it definitely could be kind of blunt with certain things, but he's a cool guy. And so, like, he did just kind of ask her, like, how much did they give you? And he was like, oh, yeah, sorry, that might have been a little, but I just figured I don't really care. And I told him, I was like, I don't care. It's this much, whatever. And my good friend from undergrad, so the story I just told you, this guy Nelson, that was like from 2018. But a few weeks ago, a friend of mine, Marcus, I actually should invite him on because he had some really interesting stuff, and he has a topic recommendation that I'll go into a little later, not related to this topic, so I'll mention it later. But
Nice.
he was telling me a few weeks ago when we met up, and we talked a little bit during the pandemic. We had some video chats because he's an entrepreneur, but he also works in IT and tech, and he's black too, so we've had good conversations. But he basically was telling me a few weeks ago, like, I told him my salary, and I basically was telling him how I hadn't really gotten a lot of bumps, right? Raises and everything. He's like, oh, you got to get to a different job. And it was just nice to comfortably be able to be like, yeah, this is how much I make. And sometimes like you're comparing notes, or not, even if it's not the same exact job or industry, but like it's kind of nice to know, even just from a perspective of how have you been able to progress and maybe get a raise. Now that's corporate, right? It's not always about work, and that's a good point you mentioned today too. Like maybe people talk about other things that involve money that aren't so like, okay, I have this income that's coming from a job, but there's other things with money. Maybe people are trying to learn how to navigate the systems, different benefits, right? People dealing with the child tax credit or other types of things. And it's not something people always want to talk about, their income or their tax situation, tax brackets, doing taxes, which is something I'm so much more fascinated with, given that I was years behind. So again, I can admit this. I was 3 years behind of doing taxes. Don't do that. 4 years, I think. I recommend not doing that because that's bad. The IRS didn't come after me though. So I didn't have any problems with the IRS. I had problems with Massachusetts Department of Revenue, which is, the state taxes. And Maryland recently just tried to like penalize me for taxes since 2018. That was a mistake because I got the new mic you changed.
I've had this mic for a year now. Like,
I don't remember you using that mic when I was on the last live stream with you guys.
Wait.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't this. I may have had like my old one, or maybe I was just using the laptop.
Oh, so you upgraded it. You really have changed.
Yeah, you have an arm.
I'm so different.
She doesn't want to be associated with that old mic anymore.
Not
Quite
that old
literally.
mic life. No.
She dropped the mic. I had to drop that mic.
I dropped the mic.
Well, I
Anyways,
really
Toby,
enjoyed.
what you were saying? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, it's all good. I think I was just talking about taxes and just being so behind. And I mean, I was talking not really. I would kind of tell some people and make jokes about like, let's hope I don't end up in jail. I mean, I'm fine. It's not really it's not good, but it's not like serious where it's like serious penalties, because a lot of it was misunderstandings. Some of it was just my fault, but that's even a thing where people don't always talk about taxes and certain things in certain situations, like with money, with laws, with legal things. Maybe there's people who've had to deal with, I don't know, like divorce. I mean, that's the thing. Everyone likes to talk about divorce and like some of the legal things, like court, people going through court and just dealing with that. I mean, divorce, that's like definitely a big thing. And there's so many others, people who've dealt with municipal, I don't know, just dumb things like parking tickets that become more. Like one girl from Boston, a friend of mine, she posted on her story like some horrifically high. Was it $300 something that she was assessed? Oh, Manny, you're gonna like this. This was like Malden, I think. Malden or Melrose. It was somewhere in Massachusetts, like on that North Shore, area. And I was like, what? I was like, I've gotten tickets in Boston, maybe Cambridge. Usually at most were $60 or $80. I don't think I've ever gotten one ticket that was like more than 60 or 80. I think 90. I think one time someone tried 90 near Fenway. I was like, this is ridiculous. Thankfully, I got that appealed. That was like right before I moved out of Boston too. I was like, you guys are not gonna stick me with this while I'm like moving in Boston. And like, I didn't even live in Boston. I just was parked there for a concert. So anyway, like sometimes there's stuff like that where crazy nonsensical things happen and people can give advice. Like I had an issue where my old apartment last year had like a, you know, there was, let's just I'll be a little diplomatic. There was nasty stuff coming out of the bathtub and the toilet that should not have been coming
Mm,
out of those systems. And
right.
so I had to like get like, that was like mid July, and I had like for the next 3 4 weeks, contractors were tearing down the tub, tearing down the walls. They had to replace everything that got touched by the sewage. It was really nasty. And like when I posted stuff, I didn't post like the actual like, I mean, I was trying not to like give people all of that, but I was trying to be like, look at all the contracting work. People were like, you better get free rent. They're like, you need to like talk to your environmental department, whether the city or Massachusetts state. You need to talk. People were like, there's people were like, if that was me, I would not be paying rent at all. I would not be paying utilities. Unfortunately, we didn't get to get any reprieve. We tried, but sometimes those are things where people just might not know, like, hey, what would you do in this situation? I think I'm being stiffed by a landlord, or I'm being stiffed by this bigger entity, and I'm not sure. Some people talk about issues with their jobs, of course, where it's like, is
Mm,
this legal? And of course Reddit, Reddit, Quora, Reddit especially, because people like to have their anonymity there a little more. But there are definitely some interesting questions I've seen for sure, and interesting
mhm,
situations I've seen people post about, but I don't like always use a lot of those spaces. So it's sometimes nice to get like real people from like, hey, I'm gonna post this to my story. People can comment on it. I'm not keeping it on my profile forever, but I need help with this slightly sensitive situation. And a bit of a tangent, but it did just kind of remind me from like talking about money or talking about other taboo things. Particularly when it's kind of like a little guy versus big demand system type of dynamic. Um,
mhm.
We're doing a little communicating about whether anybody has questions about the march itself, because we have President Manny here, who has quite a lot of information. If anybody has any questions for him, because I
yeah.
may have to take off in a little bit because
I can
I
stick
really enjoyed
around,
my 2 hours
and
together. Yeah.
I don't have to work until like 4 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow, so
Mm.
I can stay as long as I can talk until midnight. But
So I really enjoyed watching this little video by Chinese people trying to teach other Chinese people in Chinese about the march and what
Oh,
they focused on, because it's hard for Chinese people to navigate this, especially if you're a new immigrant who's still using the old language. You
right.
know, they focused on the musical acts that was happening on the day of the march. Do you guys have a favorite musical performance that happened on the day of the march?
Mm.
Because there were a lot of really amazing singers. I think I would like to. I'll pull up
yeah,
a
there
list,
were.
and then you guys can see if you have a favorite song or something. Let's see if I can
Mm, I don't even know that.
I don't think I'm as aware at all.
Yeah.
It was really bad. Like I'm thinking of like the way that there's like the inauguration, for instance. This is very different, but Barack Obama, like there's famously like Aretha Franklin. There's some people that were big performers, but I'm thinking like back then in '63, I really didn't know who. Like I probably once I hear, it, I'm probably gonna be like, oh, obviously, but off the top of my head, I don't know. Um,
But yeah, that's really cool. Like I didn't like I do want to ask and maybe this will be answered, like how, it's going to be a stupid question, but like how did they manage to organize this? Like
How did they manage to organize the march?
yes.
Oh well,
That's a really good question.
well, that's a tough one. No, well, actually, it was a combination of different factors that led to how they organized the march. It was actually led by a group of leaders that had that headed different organizations, but they all had the same goal, which was to ask for jobs, because of the fact that there were African Americans who were qualified to get these jobs, but for 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 various reasons, which were not legitimate, by the way. They were discriminated against because of their skin color, and because even though they were qualified, they were not allowed to have. And they were not allowed to attain those jobs. There
Mm-hmm.
was a proposed march that was supposed to take place in 1941, but what happened was Franklin Roosevelt found out about this march, and he basically said to A. Philip Randolph, he said, "Okay," he said, during the war, what I'm going to do is I will give defense jobs for working on planes or tanks. I can give those jobs to those people for the duration of the war. And they said, okay, well, and and they basically allowed those jobs to be given to them, regardless of color. But what happened was when the war ended, the that executive order that Franklin Roosevelt signed was simply dismissed. And so, up right until the 1960s, they weren't allowed to have those jobs. So, really, the purpose of the march and the goal of the march was to get President John F. Kennedy to enact legislation to allow people to obtain these jobs, regardless of color, regardless of race, regardless of creed, and that people should not be discriminated against uh, because of the color of their skin.
Mm-hmm.
I know I didn't really answer this thoroughly. I don't really know how to articulate point by point how they were able to really truly organize the march in such a cohesive way. But what I can tell you is that they were very prepared, even though the Kennedy administration was very concerned because they thought that there was going to be a riot because of the conflict, and I think that they were genuinely surprised when they found how organized the march was and how peaceful these demonstrations were.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was. So
Okay.
to answer that question, I don't know the specifics, but the good thing is that we had the results.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it was a success for that day, and it was definitely a very high mark before they reached the low points afterward.
Mm-hmm.
Because you remember that there was a point in the speech when Dr. King said, this is the hope that I have to go back to the South with. And then you realize, oh, right, he has to go back to the South where he's discriminated against, where he has to face people who despise him based on the color of his skin. And then 1 month later, they had the bombs that killed those four little girls in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And then President Kennedy was killed in November. And so they had some very dark times after that. It was like going. It really was like being at a mountaintop with that what that march was, and it was a high point before they reached those low points until they got the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and subsequently the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That is so cool. And the fact that they were able to stay peaceful was very, very impressive.
Oh yeah, indeed. I mean, they really didn't have anything. I think that they were so well organized because and they actually didn't think enough people would show up. They had a fear that there would be less number of people projected, but they ended up having more. It
Mm-hmm.
was over 250,000 people that showed up to that march, and it was incredible that no violence took place. And I think everybody already knew, at least the organizers already knew what they were going to do. They already knew what they were going to say. Um, and and because they had the permission of President Kennedy to come to march on Washington, and because they insisted that there would be no violence, President Kennedy decided to trust their judgment and say, if you guys want to have this march, you guys can go right ahead and do that.
Okay.
Yeah, um, it's a fear whenever you have a big event like this, whether
Mhm.
it can go wrong. As we all see, do you guys remember recently there was that there was that social media influencer that came out to just give out some do a little trivia contest, and then there was basically just way too many people trying to participate in the contest. It was, I think, over in New York City. So you guys don't remember this? It just happened
No,
recently.
no,
Oh,
I didn't hear
shoot.
about this.
Okay, well, so you're thinking some people are going to show up. Yes, Kai Sanat. There you go. Thank you. And you're thinking, we're just going to have this little tiny event, and then more and more people are showing up. And it's amazing how hard it is to do crowd control. So when
Mm.
you think they had, you know, yeah, 500,000 people show up to one location.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Was that the size of the march? I believe it was. There was 500,000 people there back in 1963.
Oh yeah, yeah, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So that, I mean, with the 500,000 people and no, you know, no, I don't think they even needed to do and what they needed to do was basically not herd the people in any direction and start a riot, and it was just fine. People they came, showed up, wanted to be peaceful. And I just think that's the most amazing thing. Like, it's not easy to have you know giant crowds of people anywhere.
Oh yeah,
True. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, what day of the week was the march? Because I'm thinking how, like especially nowadays, like how it's just, if you take a day off from work, you can, lose your job, sort of thing, and that's
It's
something that prevents people from voting and or being active.
It was on a Wednesday.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? Now, if it wasn't on a Saturday, how would people participate? It's really
Right.
interesting how I feel like legislation has made it harder and harder for us to participate in demonstrations and protests. I mean, you need permits to go to the park now. Yeah, even the big guy Trump had
Mhm.
millions and millions of dollars of police forces all around the country were asking him to pay up for all of the events he held for
Right.
his
Yeah.
rallies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's terrible that I mean, he probably could have afforded that out of all of his campaign funds. But the crazy thing is that affects all of us, all of us individuals who want to do an event. It's not easy to run one.
Mm-hmm.
So I did leave the playlist I was able to find of some of the great music that happened. They were all amazing protest songs that are iconic now. Um, and maybe you guys could. I don't know if you can share that on the stream at some point, but
I do have a
at
favorite
least,
of the songs that they sang on
yeah.
that march. My favorite is actually Joan Baez's a beautiful rendition of "We Shall Overcome." It's simple, elegant, and it's just it just it proclaims what they're aiming for. So yeah.
Yes. I think I really enjoyed Mahalia Jackson,
Oh
and
yes.
she's just such a very powerful voice, and I think I like the song. It says "How I Got Over."
Okay. No, I'll check these songs out because I think the only song I know is "We Shall Overcome." But
Well, you probably a lot of these are songs that everybody knows now. Like he's got the whole world in his hands.
oh
That's
yeah,
like
for sure. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't see.
yeah.
Oh, I see it now. He's got like yeah. I didn't see that.
And
Um,
isn't that like a? I feel like that's a, a
yeah.
spiritual song, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these songs were spiritual songs. So I hope to see us organizing, more massively like this again. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to have to take off because I don't want to make Zephyr wait for me.
Yeah.
It's his bedtime, and he likes to do something with me before we go to bed. So
All
Hey,
right,
no
no
problem.
problem, Faye.
I hope you
I
enjoy the
would like
rest of the
to connect with
conversation.
you again
Yeah.
Yeah.
at some point because I have plenty of books. I'm actually going to order another set of March. If you like, I'd like to order it and I'd like to send it to you as a gift
No
for.
way. For Zephyr?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Okay. I would definitely enjoy it with him. I'm not going to let him just read it by himself.
Oh,
He
of
reads
course.
so
I mean,
much faster than me. I'm going to make him like, we have to enjoy it together if you do
yeah.
that. Okay. Thank you so much.
sure,
Thank you
no
for the
Thank
problem.
opportunity.
you.
Thank you
Have
for
a great night.
coming.
Yes, thank you
Okay.
so much.
Good night. Bye
Good
bye.
night.
All right, now it's just the two of us.
Yes.
Right. Do you have any questions about really anything or
Yeah.
about the history?
Um,
Sure.
I don't know if it's like so much the history. I guess a bit like how the history has been definitely getting skewed lately. Like, like with Trump's I guess like arrest. I guess he was technically arrested. So I think he got out on bail if I'm not mistaken. Where he has like his mugshot. I saw some pictures of that, kind of comparing it to like MLK's, you know,
Okay.
mugshot. And
I haven't really paid attention to current events, to be honest. I've spent most of my spare time out of work just focusing on history projects that I haven't really made time to to really learn. I mean, I haven't really made time to really just pay attention
mhm.
to any current events. So, any news about former President Trump or any series of current events, I don't really have anything to comment on because I
Okay.
really haven't been paying attention to the modern news.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, like I guess I'm just like, and of course, Twitter can definitely just skew your.
Whose idea was the march? Oh well, the march was actually an idea originally by A. Philip Randolph, who wanted to organize a march in 1941, but ended up canceling it when President Franklin Roosevelt uh, uh, when President Franklin Roosevelt uh, allowed African Americans to work on defense bases, working on tanks and ships and also weaponry. It just basically manufacturing jobs. So that was his idea, and for the March on Washington, and that was back in 1941. But then, as the civil rights movement became more and more prominent, especially with the death of Emmett Till, and then you had Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott in Alabama.
Mhm.
When this started taking place, A. Philip Randolph said, maybe we should go to Washington again with this new president, and we should demand that President Kennedy enact these civil rights legislation, and also with the form of these protests that and marches that were taking place that were being filmed on television. President Kennedy finally understood that he had to do something of substance in order to try to really how, how do I articulate this? He understood. He was always he morally agreed with the goal of the civil rights movement. It's just that he had a lot of hesitation is not the right word, but he had a lot of not enemies either. But he had a lot of opponents in the form of the Southern Democrats who controlled a lot of the committees in Congress. So he wasn't really able to do a lot legislatively, even though he agreed with the civil rights movement on a moral position. But whose idea was the march? It was really A. Philip Randolph who did that, and then you had people like Bayard Rustin, who actually organized the march by bringing all these leaders together and saying, "Okay, you need to go to President Kennedy and have the and have him and try to really push him and urge him to enact this the civil rights legislation." Unfortunately, John F. Kennedy tried to push that law through, but he had a resistance from the Southern Democrats. So
Mhm.
by the time that he died, that bill was really just dead in the water. So it had to take somebody like Lyndon Johnson, who then took over to really pass that legislation. And that story within itself is just it's just incredible. I mean, you couldn't believe that he would be able to pull something off like that, but it was able to do that. And of course, I can go on and on and on how he did that. But maybe perhaps if you guys do a live stream about the 60th anniversary of the passing of the Civil Rights Bill, who knows? Maybe I could talk more,
Okay.
thoroughly on that.
Okay, because that would be
That's
next
just an
year, right?
idea. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's coming to its 60th as well. That's wow. So Rocky has another question for you.
Do you believe marches are still an effective form of demonstration? That's a good question. I don't really I don't really have an answer to that because I don't know what they achieve currently. I haven't seen any evidence that any form of demonstration today can be an effective form to create change. So because I haven't really studied that data of any modern marches that have taken place, I don't really have a comprehensive answer. But it is a good question. I'll give you that. Let's see. Chad asks, "What do you think the biggest misunderstandings regarding the march and movement? Which march and movement are you referring to? Is it the March on Washington and the Civil Rights Movement? What are the biggest misunderstandings?" I'm not sure if I understood your question.
She's following up saying, "Go to the march to meet people and show up follow up with orgs." In my opinion, so I guess yeah, the March on Washington and the Civil Rights Movement.
The biggest misunderstandings.
Like I guess what were like propagandists maybe saying? Because I know that back then MLK was not well liked at all. Like his popularity or polls were like insanely low.
Hmm. Well,
So
I mean, I think that they really the polls for Martin Luther King Jr. personally was what really took a dive when he took a stand against the war in Vietnam in 1967. In fact, he made a stand exactly 1 year before he died when he was speaking at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, denouncing the war. And because of this, they said people said, Dr. King, you shouldn't be speaking about the war. You shouldn't be talking about politics. Why don't you just stick to civil rights? Why don't you just stick with that? But he believed that on a moral level that the Vietnam War was something that he should speak out against.
hmm.
As for misunderstandings, I don't know what misunderstandings that people have had about it. At least
like
I haven't heard
like
anybody.
like political narrative. Like was there any like articles written back then that had an obvious spin or
Oh,
like was the New York Times saying some like BS or something?
well, I can tell you of one person who I don't agree with him entirely on everything. Malcolm X, believe it or not, he
Hmm.
was actually at the March on Washington, according to Manning Marable's 2012 Pulitzer Prize winning biography of Malcolm X. I had the book up here. He didn't think that he was at the March on Washington, even though he wasn't one of the speakers. He wasn't invited to attend. He was just there to witness and see what would happen. Then about a month later, he gave a speech, basically saying that it was a waste of time. He said that it didn't accomplish anything, and I think he was the one that referred to it as the farce on Washington.
Hmm.
But of course, that was before he made those comments, about President Kennedy, and then he had that conflict with the Nation of Islam, and then he ended up separating and then going to Mecca, and then coming back with a brand new perspective.
Hmm.
But in regards to this context, Malcolm X really didn't think that civil disobedience and that the march on and that the civil rights movements were good for the country. Uh, so yeah, that's I'm not able to. I'm sorry that I'm not better
No,
able
no,
articulating a better answer to the question.
no, that's fine.
But
Um,
I wanted to go back. He said, I would say the biggest misunderstanding of how much economic change the movement wanted, kind of like today, a lot of the economic desires to get left out of it when taught in schools. Yeah, that's a good point.
what is something that you wish more people knew about the March on Washington and the Civil Rights Movement?
Mm.
Like that's oftentimes gets left out in the U.S. public schools.
I wish that people would realize that it wasn't just Martin Luther King that spoke there on that day. Everybody thinks that everybody was that he was the one in charge. He wasn't. He was just one of the people in charge. He was actually the 10th speaker for that day. Hence,
Hmm.
he was the last speaker for the day. John Lewis was the sixth speaker that day. Um, I wish that people would know more about the organizers of that march too. People like A. Philip Randolph, who was that John Lewis described him as a man that if he was born in a different country, he would have been a prime minister. He was such a
Mm.
dignified, great, very, 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 very just a very wonderful individual that I wish I knew more about. Also, people like Whitney Young, who when he was a young man worked hard to try to get people of color to be accepted to work in regular jobs. He
Mhm.
wanted to get people of color to work in government jobs. And as early as 1961, he tried to get President Kennedy. He met with him privately and tried to get President Kennedy to grant more government jobs to people of color. And then of course, and that led to him hiring Carl T. Rowan to be uh, the director of the information agency, and that meant that he was the highest politically, not leader, but he had the highest political position in government as far as his skin color was concerned at that
Okay.
time.
Okay.
So yeah, the efforts of Whitney Young, the efforts of John Lewis, and learning about these organizers, people like Bayard Rustin. I think that their individual stories, I think that they should be, investigated is not the right word, but to be looked at, to look at their stories, to see how they were able to go through these moments where they were discriminated against, and they decided to do something about it. They decided to take action. To what they did was they educated themselves first,
Mm-hmm.
and then they decided to teach others.
Okay. Um, what about any women?
Women?
Yes.
Well, let's see. Mahalia Jackson was one of them.
Yeah.
There were definitely women that were on that march. None of them were, as far as I know, um, I actually don't know the stories of any women by name who were at that march,
Okay.
or any of their stories. None of them were speakers at the March on Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them sang, like Mahalia Jackson and Joan Baez, and I'm sure that there were others. But they did play a role.
All right. Yeah.
They were there. Some of them helped to work as secretaries. Some of them worked behind the scenes to call people to make sure that buses from different communities were coming to the march.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them would help make stamps or pins so that people could use, so that people could wear them. I think they should have taken more of an active role. Um, but as far as that's concerned, uh, I don't really have a lot of information with me to 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 share
Right.
with people here. I wish I did, but I know that Coretta Scott King was at home in Atlanta, Georgia, taking care of their children.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that they were watching on television. But as far as active participants, there were definitely active participants of the civil rights movement, of women that did their part, whose stories I haven't learned yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely intend to learn more about them, and I'd hope to share my discoveries at some other point.
Yes, definitely. 'Cause, like, like definitely like women's roles and voices always tends to, like, if anything, get left out. And I guess especially like for something like that, like of course, like within the civil rights movement in general, there were of course like notable women, but you know it may seem small, but that plays like such a large role in terms of stamps, and creating pins and buttons and things like that, because that is what gets the message out, and that's what keeps things and everything unified.
Well, I can tell you of one story of one very incredible woman by the name of Fannie Lou Hammer.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you know anything about her.
I've heard the name. I can't tell you if I know much, honestly.
Well,
Yeah.
back in 1964, she was actually arrested for trying to get people to register to vote.
Oh, okay.
She was
Okay.
actually beaten,
Yes.
in the prison, and then she was set free. But instead of being silent about it, she actually went to Atlantic City with Martin Luther King,
Hmm.
and she gave this incredibly charged testimony of what she experienced in front of this committee, and this was being recorded live on television. And
Mm.
as a matter of fact, Lyndon Johnson was so shocked that this was happening and that she was telling her story, and this was his moment to be nominated, and he didn't want anybody to get in the way of his of his limelight. So he ended up making a press conference quickly at the same time, so that people would focus on what he wanted to talk about. But unfortunately, he didn't know what to talk about. So as soon as
Wow.
he went up to the podium in the press room, he said, "Oh, I just wanted to give
Oh,
an update on the health of my friend Governor John Connolly, who was since it's been 6 months since he's recovered from being shot." And
wow.
that was it. And he was just trying to deter people from hearing her testimony because he thought that people were going to start rioting in the Democratic convention in 1964 based on her testimony.
Oh my God.
And the thing is that Lyndon Johnson wasn't afraid of Martin Luther King. He wasn't afraid of any of the other legislative leaders he had to deal with. But Fannie Lou Hamer, a woman who didn't have who didn't have a college education,
Hmm.
he was that a regular person that spurred him into that he was scared of her. None of the
Wow.
men that he and think about it. I mean, Lyndon Johnson was a very intimidating figure. This is a guy who knew how to, he knew how to, cajole people, and he knew how to threaten if he needed to because of his very tall stature and his size.
Mm.
Fannie Lou Hamer, no, no. So when I read about what he did and how he reacted to her, it's like, wow, this is a guy who could be a bully. But Fannie Lou Hamer was the one that really just she shook him to his core.
Right. To just have a press conference just to.
Yeah, all she was doing was just giving her testimony, and she was giving it in such a powerful way. I think it was her delivery that really just it was a powerful delivery of her story.
Wow. And is that something that you could, watch on YouTube or?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's on YouTube. The entirety of the speech. Because they ended up replaying. She won because they ended up replaying the entirety of her testimony for the evening news, so that people would watch it.
Oh, wow.
So Lyndon Johnson's efforts didn't really work.
Right. But the fact that he tried, that he gave an attempt was just like,
Mhm.
yeah, I have to distract the American people in some way. Like that's wow. I actually, yeah, I did not know. Like I've heard of her, but I didn't know exactly what she did and how that affected, Lyndon B. Johnson. Like,
Yeah,
wow,
just an
that's so
ordinary
cool.
person, just one ordinary person. I mean that tells you how powerful you can be if you raise your voice to bring awareness to a cause that's very important to you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Let's see. The question is: are there any films about the march that you would recommend? I don't know about the march per se. I mean, I don't really know any documentaries about any movies about the march that took place. I would recommend, as John Lewis recommended when I saw him, and I would recommend the PBS documentary series "Eyes on the Prize," which is about the history of the civil rights movement from the early 1950s to the late 1960s. Just that whole span, telling the stories of these individual. Actually, it's really about the story as a whole, but you also learn these details about these marches and protests, and about the lives of the people that were affected by these by these demonstrations, and also the people who participated in them, and also about the people who organized these marches. So it's very powerful. I mean, I personally recommend it. It's one of my favorites. I watch the whole series once a year,
Mm.
usually about this time. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. My top recommendation is Eyes on the Prize, for sure.
Okay. So it's a 10-part documentary.
Yeah, it was a documentary series that aired on PBS back in, I think, the late 1980s, early 1990s.
Okay. Where can you watch it?
Oh, they have it on YouTube. You can just type in "Eyes on the Prize" and see what pops up. You know, "Eyes on the Prize" Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. That's how
Okay.
I was able to see it.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you.
Oh, sure, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
I like to share a little anecdote of something I read. Well, actually, no,
Oh.
John Lewis said it. I remember that he said that after the March on Washington, President Kennedy invited the same people who spoke at the March on Washington to come to the Oval Office.
Mm.
And he said that when they arrived there, yeah, there's a photograph of John F. Kennedy with the organizers later that evening. He invited them to come to the White House. He invited them to come to the Oval Office. And John Lewis said that when they got to the Oval Office, President Kennedy was in the door waiting for them. And he shook each of their hands, and each of their hands he shook them, and he said, "Oh, you did a good job. You did a good job. You did a good job." And as soon as he got to Dr. King, he shook his hand and he said, "And you had a dream." Uh, I mean, it just goes to show you that President Kennedy was certainly listening.
Right. Yeah.
And it's been, I don't know if this is true, but apparently he said when he watched Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, he said, "I have never heard a better speech or a better delivery."
Mm-hmm.
So he was definitely impressed by the.
Yeah.
I think that maybe I'm just speculating. I think that he didn't want to be. He didn't want Martin Luther King to seize his moment in history. I think that they were. I think he considered Dr. King to be a rival
Oh.
for the spotlight of history. But yeah, but he recognized that this was the time to get it passed, even though the Southern Democrats weren't able to. Well, not that they weren't able to, but they blocked his passage of the Civil Rights bill
Mm-hmm.
to be enacted into law. But yeah, he was incredibly moved. Bobby Kennedy, his younger brother, who was Attorney General at the time, I think uh, um, he pushed John F. Kennedy to actually do more
Mm-hmm.
than he was prepared to do.
Okay. That's
Yeah, but like
good.
yeah, but like I said, it was dead in the water by the time he tried to get it through because he wasn't able to get it past Congress.
Mm.
But like I said, I already talked about Lyndon Johnson and how he was able to use that. So and what he did essentially was he used President Kennedy's martyrdom, and he said essentially in November of 1963, he said that we need to find a way, and I'm paraphrasing here, and he says, we need to find ways to honor President John F. Kennedy. And one of the ways that we can honor John F. Kennedy is by saying that it is by enacting this civil rights bill that he brought to this Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And so by using President Kennedy's martyrdom as a way to uh, get people emotionally charged. He was able to use that martyrdom, Kennedy's death, as a way to get sympathy for passage of the Civil Rights Bill. So
Okay.
even though Lyndon Johnson gets the credit for writing for signing the bill into law, it was President Kennedy that set the table.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. No, this is all just like just incredibly fascinating stuff because it's it's cool to see like how everything I guess, got pieced together to, get to the passage of the bill.
Oh yeah, there's actually a great book about it. And I think I have it here. Let's see. Do I have the book? Yes, I do have it. Oh, it's called An Idea Whose Time Has Come. And it's written by Todd S. Purdom. And he wrote this book about how the passage of the Civil Rights Bill came to be. And it's a great and wonderful book on just how piece by piece that legislation was able uh, to go through the Congress, how Lyndon Johnson was able to get the bill past those committees so that they would be um, so that it could eventually be passed. Just knowing how Lyndon Johnson was able to get through that opposition to get that bill passed and then still got it passed, even though it was politically risky for him to do so. He, it's just, to me, it's nothing short of a miracle.
Mm-hmm. Oh, awesome, awesome. Yeah. No, this was all just.
Yeah, it was all really dramatic. It's all very you know one of the things that I know about history is that history is not about facts and dates and and the military and the presidents. You know what history is really about? History is about people, and people are the most interesting subject.
You're right.
So, it's not like these people, it's not like John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, got together at the Oval Office and they said, isn't this fun that we're living in the past? Oh, look at all these formal clothes that we have to wear. Look at all these skinny ties that we're having. Isn't it great that we get to live in the past? It
Right.
wasn't like that.
Right. Yeah. It's like we got to do this right now so it can be in people's history books in the future because we know what we're doing and we know that this is going to be a big. Like, no. Like, they were just hoping, and fortunately, it was. And they were hoping and working and organizing for it.
Oh yeah, so yeah, history is yeah. So history can be relatable, and it's something
For sure. Yeah.
it's something that's accessible to us. I have access to it, but after meeting with people like Andrew Young and who was a friend of Dr. King, and I remember he told stories about what Martin was like, and meeting with John Lewis and meeting people like Harris Wofford, who was John F. Kennedy's civil rights advisor and a friend of Dr. King. And, meeting all of these people made these stories more real to me. And it prompted me um, to buy literature and books about the civil rights movement. So I suppose if it hadn't been for that, I suppose I would be interested in other things. So I'm very grateful for the chance that I was able to meet these
Yeah.
people that lived during the time period. And, I also met John F. Kennedy's last surviving sibling, but that's not really relevant except for the fact that um, JFK was president during the March on Washington.
Mm-hmm.
But but I have to say that even when I look back, because a lot of these people that I met, they're gone now.
Mm.
You know, they and their time has passed into history.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's very important that while we live, that we pass these stories on, that we take their stories. We can write about them. We that we share them, and I think it's important that we can use these stories as a way to inspire people to create a better future, not only for ourselves, but
Mhm.
also to try to improve the world around us, as I've said earlier.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Uh,
I will.
Toby, do you have any questions?
No, I was really just trying to catch up, and just try to catch on to everything. No specific questions. I don't think. I mean, there's some good questions, right? Even some of the like basic low level, like how was this thing planned? How like who was involved? I mean, I don't know. Like it's such a famous event, but like I don't always see it in context of like what happened before, what happened after.
Ah,
Right.
63, I think that's relatively like early because like if you think about 68 being when MLK was assassinated, and then like I don't know exactly when everything happened. Like I couldn't even tell you when the bus boycott exactly happened, what year, when.
oh,
I mean, I'm sure like
1957. There we go.
you said 60s. When?
57.
Oh, I'm sorry, 1957.
Okay,
57.
so wow, that stuff. So 50s was really the hotbed of a lot of
Oh,
that.
that's when everything started to really get on. It was really in the 1960s that everything started to go in motion.
Interesting,
Hmm.
interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna have to like look more because I know we watched a little documentary for when we talked about MLK, um, and that was a good documentary that we watched when we had a discussion about this like maybe early last year, or I'm trying to remember exactly when it was. Um, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to like look at a timeline of all of the stuff again, and just because I think for me I can like visually see like okay, where was this in relation to other things? You have a timeline, you have like that always kind of works nice. Like, but sometimes when I just think of when did this thing happen? It happened here. It was an important event, but I don't know. We just learn these things in such basic ways, and it's always such. You're doing it in the context of a whole class. You might be trying to study for your like the even if it's not AP, you have some standardized tests. But
Right.
sometimes like you learn this stuff, the academic portion of it is kind of like it muddies things, right? Even if you learn this thing many years and like well, obviously you take history many different years, but yeah, it still doesn't always stick so much. So I think really getting to look at some of these documentaries or like a nice visual history. I mean, there's the museum, but I didn't get to go to the. I went to the National Museum of African American History and Culture
Mm.
February of 2018. So that was actually relatively like it may have just opened like a year or two before that. Um, I went as on a trip from when I was in grad school in upstate New York. Like a few different orgs, including some of the black orgs, pulled together resources to help people. I mean, we still like had to kind of pay for it, but it was like pretty heavily subsidized because you might pay $200 something, which covered it was President's Day weekend, so it covered like the hotel for 3 nights. It covered the tickets for that museum are free, but at least you book the ticket
Right.
because that you need like reservations for that kind of thing.
Right.
Um, and then it also covered like some bus tours that we had. Oh, not to mention the transportation from like Albany, New York to DC, um, Arlington, Virginia, but same area, basically. Um, so I know like I saw the museum there, but I didn't really get the museum is so big and it just you can get so lost in it. So I wouldn't say lost because it is kind of like a certain direction that you go, but it just so heavy.
Hmm.
So I didn't get to really get to the more modern era of the civil rights movement because that would be a good museum. Because that museum, like, even though I didn't get through it, it was very, very heavy. Like when you're looking at the stuff that's more in the slavery
Right.
and like
Yeah.
the early portion, the civil rights, not the civil rights, but like the Revolutionary War and then some of the other wars. Um, so I think that something like that even would help me understand a bit more. So, seeing like a visual kind of history and all the screens, and you get to see literally a nice little timeline of everything and how it fit into other things. I liked what you were saying about Kennedy, because I don't really study much. Like Kennedy, of course, tragically assassinated, but
Mhm.
there's a lot that I don't really know about him and like his. I know that he was a partner to MLK, and MLK would kind of like call him out a bit and to kind of like say certain like I think there was a bit of a dynamic where like MLK was quote unquote apolitical, like he didn't choose to align with a party so that he could kind of speak truth to whoever.
Mhm.
Not that you can't necessarily if you're part of the party, but anyway, I think like with Kennedy, he's an interesting figure and like his role in all of this, and that he kind of like this wasn't the random march that just happened, right? Like there was the fact that there was that kind of communication is interesting. Like he kind of approved it, quote unquote. Um, I think that's actually a pretty interesting thing too. Like there was quite a lot. Like the way these figures are kind of reminds me of Frederick Douglass, right? 100 years earlier, but with Frederick Douglass having the ear of Lincoln or whoever, he would be able to go and
Mhm.
talk,
Yeah.
right? It's interesting that you give those larger than life figures who do have a really good relationship with the president. They're pushing them and making them advocate for this cause
Right.
now. And this kind of goes into what we were talking about 2 weeks ago. Who are these type of leaders? Who are the people? Like, what's the change that's happening? Who are the big figures? And you know, maybe for different reasons, assassinations or just various dynamics that have changed in the last 40, 50, 60 years. You don't have those central leaders, even with orgs like Black Lives Matter, um, that you kind of don't have those big, larger than life leaders. Some of them, of course, went to the Congress, like John Lewis, but I don't necessarily hear of like the president of Black Lives Matter. Not like they're the ones who speak for all black people, but you don't necessarily see that where you have the person who can go to the White House and speak to the president and organize these large marches. It's just a very different dynamic wherein things are much more decentralized in a way. And there's a lot more, I guess, political cap. Like there weren't as many black people in Congress, and so I guess maybe that's the big shift too, is that you have those black leaders and like the Congressional Black Caucus and others that wouldn't have existed back then, back in the '60s. So that seems to be kind of interesting when I think about it. Like that's just like maybe my last point is like there's been a lot of the politics and people going into politics. Like I don't have a specific question, but it's just kind of a big it's like a change. Like the MLK figures aren't really around. Even when you had the Black Panthers, that was also they organized very differently,
Mhm.
and they definitely were not trying to go to the White House and negotiate with whoever. Um, and so I do wonder kind of like what are the parallels or what were the people what did people decide to do between now and then to kind of be able to like get the attention of you know again it just seems to be politics. Like even with Clinton, he had a lot of allies, black leaders across the country. Even with the crime bill, there were many black elected leaders who supported it,
Right,
but
of
you don't
course.
necessarily see people like MLK necessarily who were in the White House and doing these big marches when it came to certain things like the assault rifle ban or these things. I don't know. I'm kind of like a little all over the place, but it is just an interesting thing to think about. Like interesting for me to think about. Because yeah, not that MLK was literally the last of his kind, but he was one of the last of one of his kind. I feel like
Mhm.
Hmm.
that's a very different era.
There's I know that we have to wrap up. So I guess what I wanted to do is three things. First, I wanted to answer Barack Rocky Giles' question. He said, "How far was the march in
You're right.
distance from where to where?" Well, it was 1.5 miles, and it was
Okay.
supposed to
Mm.
be from the Washington Monument all the way to the Lincoln Memorial.
Okay.
Yep. So that was from where to where, as far as the distance is concerned. The second thing I wanted to mention is that Toby mentioned that was President Kennedy was a partner in this. Well, I don't know if I would necessarily call him that. He did a lot of symbolic gestures, like for example, at his inaugural ball, he danced with a woman who was black. You know, no big deal there. And he appointed people. He appointed African Americans to prominent positions in the White House and also in the government. But he really didn't do enough as far as enacting legislation for a full civil rights, largely because he had opposition from Southern Democrats. And another factor was actually Kennedy actually thought he was doing a lot,
Right.
but in actuality, he was very hesitant when he found out that about the Freedom Riders and that people were getting buses, that people were getting attacked on riding on these integrated buses. He didn't want that happening at all. He thought that that was a distraction from what he really wanted to do was to become involved with NASA, and he was more interested in foreign affairs than he was in domestic affairs.
Mm.
Uh, so
Mm.
uh, that also played a factor. he thought that the civil rights movement was well, not the movement, but he thought that those demonstrations were a diversion
Mm.
from things that he really wanted to do, from other things that he wanted to do. But as far as a partner is concerned, he really didn't do a lot for civil rights because of that. And as another historian named Timothy Naftali once said, that he politically it is understandable, but historically it's unforgivable.
Mm.
Mm.
I
So
like
yeah,
that.
it's something that it's something to think about as far as I mean, President Kennedy really didn't do a lot. He like I said, he agreed with them on moral positions. He believed that civil rights was something that it needed to be achieved. Unfortunately, he didn't really have a game plan as to how to actually achieve it. I think that what he really wanted to do politically in the long term was win re-election on the landslide, so that he could have a bigger mandate. Because when
Mm.
he was first elected in 1960, he didn't. He was elected by a little more than 1,000 votes, so he
Mm.
was a very slim margin. So because of that mandate, he really wasn't able to get a lot done.
Mm.
And because of that, it was so little. So what he thought was, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to win in a landslide in 1964, and then I'll get this, and then I'll do everything that I need to do, and everything that I want to get done in 1965. And Bobby Kennedy argues that it would have been that the Civil Rights Bill would have been passed in 1965 if President Kennedy was alive. But thanks to the efforts of Lyndon Johnson, it got it was actually passed 1 year earlier than expected.
Mm.
And
Mm.
of course, we can talk about that in July next year. If you guys want to have another discussion on the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and in its impact on our society, and that's just an idea that I'm throwing out there. And
Yeah,
then
for sure.
finally, what I want to do is, in order to wrap this thing up, I want to talk about what the march should mean, for all of us. And the truth is that um, the fight isn't over.
Right.
Mm.
Even though the March on Washington inspired a lot of different movements and it brought some important changes, the fight for equality between different races isn't over. You have to remember that back in 2013, that the Supreme Court decision struck down a part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And and that part of the legislation actually required some states to get permission from the federal government to change their voting laws. So because
Mm.
of this, the state have created new voting rules, and as a result of it, it makes voting a lot more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I have here a Harvard University study that says that Black Americans are over three more likely to be killed. Are over three times more likely to be killed by police than white Americans.
Right.
And then, and of course, you guys remember that after George Floyd was killed, about 15 million people protested in support of Black lives. So, like I said, the fight is not over. And what I want to do is I want to end maybe this live stream with a quote that A. Philip Randolph once said about the March on Washington. He
Mm-hmm.
said that the March on Washington is not a climax of our struggle, but a new beginning, not only for the Negro, but for all Americans who thirst for freedom and a better life. End quote.
Hmm.
So, what is the March on Washington about? Well, it's about all of us. It's about it's about something that it should be deeply American. about wanting to have a better life, not only for ourselves but also for any future children that we might have, or maybe for our future generations that have not been born yet. America should be a free ground.
Hmm.
Here to the Pacific Ocean. It's not about. I can tell you what America is supposed to be about. It's about an idea
Right.
that you and I have value and that we mean something. And what we're fighting for in the end is that we should be fighting for each other. I should be advocating for your right, to sit where you want to sit, to be where you want to be, and to be what you want to be.
Hmm.
I should be advocating for you in the same, and I would hope that you would do the same for me.
Absolutely.
And in the way that we lift each other up, and in the way that we lift each other up as we as we go through our struggles, I think that the way that to really affect change is really in trying to impact just from person to person. It only starts with just one spark,
Hmm.
and if we can light that in each other, we can, as I think John F. Kennedy once said in his speech, and the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And that's what we should do. We should become what John F. Kennedy would have ignited. And I think that I actually want to close out with this quote from Robert Kennedy that he gave. And he gave this on the day after John F. Kennedy. I'm sorry, he gave it after no, not John F. Kennedy, after Martin Luther King was still the day after. And it's from the very end of his speech. And I think it really sums up what John F. What Martin Luther King was trying to say. He said, "Our lives on this planet are too short, and the work to be done is too great to let this spirit flourish any longer in this land of ours." The spirit of violence that he was talking about. Of course, we cannot vanish it with the program nor with the resolution, but we can perhaps remember, if only for a time, that those who live with us are our brothers, that they share with us the same short moment of life, that they seek, as we do,
Hmm.
nothing but the chance to live out their lives in purpose and happiness, winning what satisfaction and fulfillment they can. Surely this bond of common faith, this bond of common goal, can begin to teach us something. Surely we can learn at least to look at around and to look at those around us as fellow men. And surely we can begin to work a little harder to bind up the wounds among us and to become in our hearts brothers and countrymen once again. End quote. And I think that that's what we should strive for.
Poetry.
Yeah. It's powerful. I agree.
That quote, can you actually? Because if I was gonna go search what you just said, I think I would
Can
not.
you send the? Can you share the link?
Yeah, sure. I
Yeah.
can do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll share it right here. I got it from the John F. Kennedy Library and Museum
Mm.
Archives. I hope they're watching because please hire me. No, I'm just kidding. Well, not
Yes.
really kidding, but I know I've been talking about them a lot. But yeah, as I said, I hope that all of us can remember that we could be gone at any moment.
Right.
So I think it's up to us that while we are still breathing, to try to advocate for one another and to be there for one another if needed. and I hope that we can be able to try to create the world in such a way that we can make Martin's dream come true.
Yes.
And so that's what let's make this our life's mission. Let's help make Martin Luther King's dream come true, and let's
That
do
part.
it
Mhm.
together.
Yes. Yes. No. This
Well
was
said.
absolutely incredible. This was an absolutely fantastic stream. President Manny, thank you so much for coming
Well,
on.
well, thank you for having me,
Yeah.
and I'm available anytime. So I'd be happy to be back on whenever there's an invitation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, we'll definitely be
Really
in
appreciate it.
contact. No,
Thank
like
you.
Yeah.
it's always amazing having you on. And
Yeah.
yeah, like we'll definitely be in touch. We'll be in contact, and of course, if you want to contact President Manny, he's in the Discord. Um, I'm gonna actually share that link again. He is a busy man, though, but but yeah, for anybody who's listening, definitely join the Melanated Council Discord, and we usually stream every Tuesday, every other Tuesday now. However, because of President Manny's schedule and Faye Q's schedule, we're able, yeah, to stream tonight at 8. But yeah, definitely join us next time. And with that said, thank you all so much for joining us, and y'all have a great night.
Thanks
Yes.
everybody, and thank you for watching. And this is CNN. No, it's not CNN.
This I was like
Yeah,
NPR
so
would be my go-to because
we're wearing suits and we
this is
look like we're
8 p.m.
we're broadcasting.
You're
Thank you
wearing
very
a
much
suit.
for watching, and thank you very much for being a part of this melanated council family. Please
Yeah.
know that we really appreciate your viewers and you're viewing us, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Yes.
Yes, please
Yes.
be back tomorrow even, I believe.
Yeah. I believe so. Like we gotta definitely coordinate that. But yeah. But
That's
yeah.
the last thing you're gonna say on this live stream after we just said goodbye to our viewers. Who, we just said thank you and all that stuff. And, oh, by the way, we have you have to remember the live stream we have to do.
No, it's a
That's
whole
how you're gonna close this thing out.
yes, please.
We be closing it out
Yes.
anyway.
No, no,
Any way we
I
can.
got one. I got one.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, here's what I'm gonna say. To those of you who are watching, thank you for being with us, and we hope that you will take tonight to reflect on what Martin Luther King's dream was all about. I know we didn't really get a chance to really discuss his speech, but I want you to remember this. One of the things that what John Lewis also taught us is that you can make a difference. No matter where you are, no matter what your occupation is in life, no matter how many setbacks you have, remember that you absolutely do have a future.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't do anything without your participation.
Hmm.
So when you go to sleep tonight, remember that you have value,
Right.
that you have worth. Remember that you are somebody.
Right.
And no matter where you go in life, and no matter what you've been through or no matter what anyone says about you, that you have a choice. Choose to do something that's bigger than you. Think about your neighbors, think about your friends, and more importantly, think about your place in the world and think about the change and be the positive change that you want to see.
Absolutely.
Believe in yourself, and remember that no matter where you, no matter if you feel alone, please know that there's always someone out there that will believe in you too.
Yeah. Amen. All right. And with
Man, yeah, I love it. Preaching, yeah.
yes.
Well,
With that,
I meant those things too, but
yeah, yes. No,
For real.
no. Thank you so much, President Manny, for joining us. And
Yeah.
that note, everyone, have a great night.
all right, be good and do good.
Yes. And get into good trouble.
Yes,
Yes, good
amen.
trouble.
Amen. All right, everyone.
All
Good night.
right, have a good night. Thank you.
Yes, thank
Have
you.
a good night, all.